Yeah, I'm Paul Snyder. How you doing? Snyder. Paul. Oh. Yeah, Paul Snyder. Oh, fuck you. Fuck you all. Bastards.
You seemed a little pissed off at something. What? I don't know. But not a bad guy. He's a good tipper.
You smug bastards. Everybody kissing your ass. Everybody down on their fucking knees. Well, not me. I don't kiss ass for nobody. You're not gonna forget me. You rotten fuckers. You tried to kill me. I found her, didn't I? I found her.
I was working in this Dairy Queen part-time while I went to high school.
Excuse me, sir. The management is asking to speak to you. Your fly is open and the whole restaurant can see your dong.
It's the EsotEric Eric Roberts podcast, and we're talking about Star 80. Keywords nude model, keywords dying young, keywords reference to Dairy Queen, keyword looking at oneself in a mirror while wearing underwear. Roy, how are you?
I'm ready for something sweet, soft, and white. I'm no longer Roy. From now on, please refer to me by my stage name, Paul Snyder Jr.
Okay, PSJ.
Sir Paul.
I love it. I love this rebranding. I think it's going to be good for you. Well, we're talking about this movie from 1983 called Star 80.
What were you up to in 1983?
Being a baby. I have pretty good memories of it. I feel like I have memories of 1983. And we've talked about this, I believe. And I have memories of seeing Return of the Jedi.
Me too. That's pretty much one of my that's the first movie I can remember seeing at the theater. Actually, I can remember that it was the second time I'd been to the theater to see Return of the Jedi, but I can't actually remember the first time I went.
I remember those hover bikes.
Yeah, I remember going with my grandma and my mom to the Crossroads 8 and seeing Return of the Jedi for the second time. And my grandmother was freaked out, thought the whole thing was satanic.
Whoa. Yeah, it is kind of satanic.
Oh, extremely.
For years and years, I thought that I had memories of seeing E.T. when it first came out in 1982. And I always wondered, how could that be? Because I was born in 1980.
Mm-hmm. And late 1980.
That's right. But I swear I remember being in the theater and seeing that movie. Well, what it was E.T. was re-released in like 1985 or 6, somewhere in there. And that's when I had actually seen it. So let's solve that mystery.
I think I might have seen it then too. I can't remember something. I remember maybe I slept through a lot of it or something. I remember at some point seeing the frogs, maybe not in a movie theater. Maybe I saw E.T. like in on something at like my mom's school she was a counselor at or something. I forget. I'm not sure. I saw it at some point in the mid 80s and don't remember it that well.
You're talking about the frog dissection scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy when you're a kid.
I guess. I'm just kidding. Not as heavy as Star 80.
Yeah, this is a pretty heavy movie. This is keeping with our second season motif of Chicago directors movies.
Oh, you're right. And Jewish characters played by Eric Roberts. Last time you asked if he'd ever played anyone Jewish, well, they kind of toned down the Jewishness of Paul Snyder, but in Vancouver, he was known as the Jewish pimp, and he was famous for wearing a Star of David medallion.
Oh, okay. So that's this is the Jewish season then of EsotEric Roberts.
Yeah, but yeah, I guess you're right. Bob Fosse's from Chicago.
Yeah, and this was Fosse's last movie before his death in 1987. At the age of 60.
Yeah, and this was his second flop out of 5 movies, I think. Like his first movie, Sweet Charity, was a flop. Then he had 3 big hits in a row. Then this one.
All That Jazz was a hit?
I think so. It was nominated for a bunch of Oscars.
I just watched it for the first time yesterday.
How'd you like that?
I prefer Star 80.
I know you texted me that you would have preferred that Star 80 have a happy ending. And I was like, what? Like, and you said, you wish Dorothy Stratten had been pregnant. I was like, that's really fucked up, man.
I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I always just thought that those texts were confidential and things that we talked about off mic.
He.
Har he ho. So this was based on an article by Teresa Carpenter called Death of a Playmate. Did you read the article?
I did, or at least most of it. I don't know if I finished the article.
Oh, cool. Was it
I read a
long?
lot of it's kind of long. It's a what I think it's from the Village Voice. I can't remember, and it won a Pulitzer. It was a good article. It was quite a bit like the movie.
Yeah.
That's where I got the detail about the Star of David and the Jewish pimp. They were in the article. But it was a good read. It's just that I think I was like reading it in bed and fell asleep and didn't go back to it.
Well, for those of our listeners who aren't familiar with Star 80, it's based on a true story of the death of Dorothy Stratten, who was murdered
Death of a
by
Playmate.
her husband, Paul Snyder, played by Eric Roberts in the film Star 80. And this is a movie that really kind of launched his career, right? I mean, he'd been in a few things before this, but this was the big one.
This may have been only his second theatrical movie to Raggedy Man, which we haven't covered yet. I don't know what his role is like in Raggedy Man at all, so I don't know. But I know that he's much more known for this today, I would say, than Raggedy Man.
Well, I've seen the poster for Raggedy Man, and
He's on it, isn't he?
But I don't know if that was something that they decided after.
I don't know. I mean, I think he is
Rose.
one of the leads in Raggedy Man, but yeah, you're right. But I would today we definitely think of Star 80 before Raggedy Man, I would say.
Yeah.
I think there was some Oscar buzz for him, maybe.
So the movie starts off with the Lad Company logo, which is that tree that kind of gradually forms.
Which always makes me think of Blade Runner. No matter how many movies I see the Lad Company logo before, I always think of Blade Runner.
Yes, it makes me think of Blade Runner, but for me more, I watched the movie Night Shift that we talked about on the pod a lot.
Yes, which is another great Lad Company movie.
Another great Lad Company 1982 movie. But that tree, that's another thing. That's an early memory of mine from being a child, along with the air bikes of Return of the Jedi.
Lad Company had quite a few good movies over their run between whatever year, sometime around 1980 to 2007.
Yeah, it says they were founded in 79, and I think the first big hit would have been Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, they had, oh gosh, they did Body Heat, Once Upon a Time in America, Braveheart, The Right Stuff, Police Academies 1 and 2.
And by the time we get to Braveheart, that logo changed, because I don't remember seeing that after a certain point.
Me neither.
Yeah, I wonder what it ended up being. But that old tree thing, man.
What if it was the same and we just crazy? I don't know, though. I don't remember seeing it either.
So we go from this great tree logo to the great title card of Star 80, which is that license plate, which is so cool. And this is a movie that is pretty much narrated by interview clips.
Which is something that a device that Fosse was fond of, right? Like they do that in Lenny.
That's
right. It
right.
has all those interviews, and then to an extent, you could say All That Jazz does as well.
Yeah, there's some of that in All That Jazz. And
definitely
really,
people speaking their thoughts to in an interview style fashion, including the Bob Fosse stand-in to, I guess that's Death. That woman or whatever.
Yeah, the Jessica Lange character.
Oh, that was Jessica Lange.
The Angel of Death.
Oh.
Can you think of that many movies that use this interview narration thing?
It seems like something really favored by the director Bob Fosse most reminds me of is Woody Allen.
Yeah, I was thinking about Broadway Danny Rose.
Yeah, I feel like Woody Allen loves this. And, he would do it first with, what's that movie? Take the Money and Run, I think would be the first movie where he did it like a documentary style movie, mockumentary.
Yeah, I'm sure it had been done before, but the
and
way
just they reminded me of each other so much, and that they seem so inspired by Fellini and Bergman and stuff. I think that Woody Allen escapes the influences a little more than Bob Fosse does.
Yeah.
Or
All That Jazz is very 8.5-esque.
So is, it is very 8.5-esque, but I couldn't help but thinking of those movies a lot when watching Lenny, and to an extent pretty much everything after Cabaret he goes to, and even Cabaret feels like Luciano Visconti's The Damned or something, like some kind of lugubrious Europe movie of its period to me.
Okay. But yeah, Broadway Danny Rose would come out the year after this. And it's both this, talking heads discussing a kind of a pathetic or a sad character with through anecdotes.
Well, even this movie is shot by Sven Nykvist,
Right.
who would work with Woody Allen a lot. And is he the Bergman cinematographer? I haven't seen him.
Yeah, he was the Bergman.
There you
collaborator.
go.
They say that Sven, is it Nykvist or Nykvist? I heard someone call him.
Oh, I
Nykvist
can see
one time.
Nykvist. That makes sense. My bad.
They said that he learned to cry with one eye when he would direct the Bergman movies, because one eye would be on the camera looking through the eyepiece, and the other eye he allowed to shed tears during certain scenes that were emotional.
Is that like that also that Bergman loved that Little Rascals bit with would draw like a big circle on the eyepiece of the camera, so that Nykvist, when he was crying one eye, to have that other eye with the
And everybody would laugh and point at him.
yes,
because he
so
looks
he
like
would
a
cry
goddamn
even
fool.
more.
So do you remember the interview clip that kicks off the story?
It's not the guy saying the guy that was like he always has some cockamamie idea, the little cocker.
That comes just a little bit later.
So is it Dorothy Stratten?
It is Mariel Hemingway as Dorothy Stratten talking about her brother's reaction to her being in Playboy, which was a strange choice to kick the movie off with.
Yeah, you're right.
And then she explains that Playboy's motto is they like the girl next door types. They look for wholesome girls who are fresh and naive. And Hemingway does
Mariel
a good
Hemingway
job.
had gotten plastic surgery for this movie.
That's right.
you-
She had breast augmentation.
Yes. She'd already been nude extensively in the movie Personal Best. Have you ever seen Personal Best?
No, but I was reading about it prior to talking about this movie here.
That's a pretty crazy movie.
Now, was that a made for TV or was that like a regular?
Oh, I'm guessing it has to be a regular unless it was made. I'm pretty sure it's a regular movie.
Oh,
But it's pretty crazy. She's it's about the US ladies track team
mm-hmm.
and relationships that go on in there. And it is written and directed by Robert Towne, who of course is the writer of The Last Detail and Chinatown, among many other movies, Mission Impossible 2. And he wrote and directed Without Limits and Tequila Sunrise. But the movie has a lot of nudity. It has both straight and lesbian relationships in it, and just tons of nudity. And a lot of Mariel Hemingway is naked a lot in it. So you really got to see the difference in the size of her breasts in these two movies.
Oh, I see. That's why you did some research.
I've seen Personal Best a couple
compare.
times over the years. In fact, recently, because it was leaving HBO at the end of January, I was like, oh, what a good choice of you to do this, because I just watched Personal Best again. And Personal Best has one of the crazy, both this movie and Personal Best are prime. They wouldn't make this movie the same way now movies. Because the male gaze has never been more felt than in Personal Best. There's a montage in that movie of women high jumpers. And you know, like how when somebody does the high jump, they jump backwards with their legs spread over that bar. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I sure do.
They flop back onto the mat. There's a montage of close-ups of their crotches, cutting from one crotch to the next as they land on the mat. Very strange, with the thighs all spread. It's very weird, and it goes on a while, and you're just like, wait, what the hell's going on here? Why is this in the movie?
You also have Scott Glenn playing a character named Terry Tingleoff.
Yes, he's the coach.
Coach Tingleoff. Yeah, I see. I'm reading here that also Hemingway appeared in a nude pictorial in the April 1982 issue of Playboy and was on the cover.
Oh, wow.
So she's we can call her an exhibitionist.
I wonder if that had anything to do with this film, because I don't know when they shot the movie and if the two were related at all.
Probably around this time. And I also had read that she had really campaigned to be in this movie.
Yes. So, doesn't that seem odd? I cannot, not that she would campaign to be in this movie. I think that Fosse was such a hot director that I can see why an actor would really want to be in a Bob Fosse movie.
Yeah. I don't know what.
And at this point, he had the power here. You see that he didn't cast major stars. Obviously, he cast more two up and comers, and then Cliff Robertson plays Hugh Hefner.
And how big of a star was Cliff Robertson?
And that Cliff Robertson has one of the craziest careers in history. because he was John. We already discussed in Rebels of PT 218 that he was John F. Kennedy in Rebels of PT 109.
That's right.
And that was like what, in 1962 or 63. And then within 5 years, he was a Batman on a Batman villain named Shame, a spoof of Shane on multiple episodes of Batman. And then like the year after that, he won Best Actor at the Oscars. He had a very strange career. He would have to be like up and down, small roles and big roles. He was leading man in the movie Obsession and stuff. And he was leading man in numerous pictures, but I guess he was never a major star and did a lot of TV. So he's not that big a deal to get, but he was. It's kind of strange. He's kind of almost Eric Roberts, like, not that they have similar careers, but that they both have very unique careers.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say that.
But yeah, you have the captain of Rebels of PT 218 here with the captain of PT 109.
Cool. Bringing the worlds together.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but his name's Robertson and Eric Roberts' name is Roberts.
That's another fascinating connection.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Cliff Robertson, he won the Oscar for the movie Charlie. Flowers for Algernon was the book that everybody likes.
Yeah, I saw that movie on TV when I was a little kid.
Yeah, my dad made us rent it from Movies Etc. after we rented Phenomenon. He was like, "You want to see a better version of that movie where the guy won an Oscar? You guys need to watch Charlie. We're gonna go rent Charlie."
I remember seeing Charlie when I was a kid and my grandfather telling me someday they're going to cure retardation. I'm still waiting for that day, Roy. I mean, Paul Snyder Jr.
Cliff Robertson died still. I don't know if he'd probably abandoned the idea, but he, I guess, for years tried to get a Charlie sequel going. And he even shot 15 minutes of it with his own money to try to convince people to make the sequel.
If anybody out there has that footage, please DM me. I would love to see it. Maybe it's on YouTube somewhere. Well, let's jump back into the plot, Roy.
Okay.
So we have this little taped interview thing, and then the first guy we see in the movie, we see pictures of Dorothy Stratten as played.
During the opening credits, you missed one thing. Did you see who the art director of the film was?
Glenn Campbell?
Close. It was Michael Bolton.
Are you serious?
Yes.
Man, that's wild. Everybody's got to start somewhere.
When we start the movie, it says that it's Vancouver, BC, 1978, but it looked more like Vancouver AD 1978. Big fuck up.
Yeah, I was expecting to see Eric Roberts in a caveman.
Yeah.
But he is in caveman mode in this scene. He's lifting weights.
Oh, yes.
We get a little tour of Paul Snyder's room, which is covered in pictures of naked women. Well, the first thing that we see is a painting of Telly Savalas.
Yeah.
Like right up front and center, we see Telly Savalas, and then some naked women taped on the wall. We see an aerial photograph of the Playboy Mansion. So we get to see some of this guy's obsessions as he's lifting weights in his room in Vancouver.
Is that the room in Vancouver? I think that's the room in Hollywood.
It says Vancouver.
Oh, when he's doing the weightlifting?
Yeah. We do see a little bit in the beginning of the movie of the end of the story.
Okay.
And we see a Snyder who is emotionally distraught, dripping with sweat. The room is covered with pictures, but it's pictures of Dorothy Stratten.
Yes. The movie definitely starts with a montage of nude pictures of Mariel Hemingway as Dorothy Stratten. They meticulously, it seems like, went in and recreated all these things, all these pictorials of Dorothy Stratten with Mariel Hemingway. Yeah,
it's a very photograph heavy movie, which I thought was cool. So we see the Snyder at the very beginning. He wipes his face, his sweaty face, and he smears blood all over his face. And then we go to Vancouver, where we see him lifting weights 2 years prior.
Yeah.
And then we see some nice Taxi Driver, Boogie Nights stuff of him, and Raging Bull kind of stuff of Snyder practicing introducing himself.
Yes, and adjusting his penis
Mm-hmm.
Or is that later?
No, he does it here. Yeah, because he's wearing like a bikini. What do they call that?
This is another one where I felt really body
T-string.
shamed by Eric Roberts.
Oh yeah, he looks great, lean and cut.
Yeah, I was like eating some garbage while I was some Take 5 bars.
I was eating some leftover Chinese food that had no flavor in it whatsoever.
Oh wow, maybe that's it was made of pure COVID.
That's what I thought when we got it the other night. I was eating it and I was thinking, oh my God, do I have it again? I can't taste this one bit. But no, it was just flavorless food.
Many points in this movie, I thought, oh my gosh, do I think Paul Snider is almost too likable of a film protagonist?
Yeah, same.
Hard to imagine this movie flopped.
Well, he's very charming here in the mirror, introducing himself until all of a sudden he turns and goes, fuck you all.
Fuck you all.
Fuck you bastards.
yeah.
So he's got,
you see the undercurrents of violent hatred for everyone.
Yeah, and we see the chip on the shoulder appear.
Yes.
Very early on.
Chip on the shoulder is a good call. The insecurity.
And this is where we go to we see some interview clips of a club owner who's reminiscing about working with Snyder in Vancouver. And this is where we hear about the cockamamie ideas.
Yes.
Ideas like
that little cocker. And this is also where you find out that he was a pimp.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he kind of suggests that he did it and then just sort of like admits that he did it.
No, they ask him, they're like, how did he make money? He's like, I did lots of things, he did some pimping. And they said, do you say pimping? He's like, oh, did I? I guess I did.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so we see Snyder at an auto show.
Well, first we see the wet t-shirt contest at the club, which is another thing. Like I was gonna say, or I had said already that the movie would not be done the same way today. You can see how much effort Bob Fosse put into shooting this wet t-shirt contest, and how high energy all these girls are. And like all of his movies have these burlesque club scenes in them. I believe all 4 or 5 of the movies he made have them, as I can recall. He was obsessed with these kind of scenes. That's
where he got his start as a performer.
Yes. And this scene and like the scene later kind of feel almost like they're the musical numbers of this movie. With these girls are like probably way too good of dancers for local wet t-shirt people in Vancouver and stuff. Like they're very like high energy and going crazy. We have Paul Snyder talks to the club owner and tells him, you blew it, man. You blew it because you're too cheap. You should have raised the cover charge.
I knew you would like that for some reason when I saw that part. I was like, Roy's going to mention this.
You blew it, man. You blew it.
You know, this movie came out in 83. There's only a 5-year difference, but I mean, I really feel like Fosse takes you back to that time, like, because there was a big difference between 78 and 83 as far as the fashion, the music. I mean, it's not like it is now, I don't think. I feel like there's a big like demarcation between the 70s and the 80s. And the 80s didn't really get going until 83, 84. But this
when
really
I
feels
think
like
about being a little kid, I think about, and we grew up in Oklahoma, not in Fast and Furious Los Angeles. But when I think about things people wore in people's living rooms and stuff, it feels more like the 70s to me, those early 80s do.
Well, think about it too. We grew up in
I feel oranges
around
and
our
browns.
grandparents' homes, and
yes,
a lot of earth tones and stuff. And I really
even
feel
my
like
clothes.
Yeah, true. Like the more earth tone and more like
a lot of earth tones,
plaid patterns and stuff like that.
Yeah,
snap button shirts were all the rage where we came from.
Do you know that his name was Paul Leslie Snyder, and the original tagline of the movie was, "You know Les Paul, now meet Paul Les."
Are you kidding me?
No.
That's great. I'm gonna have to track that down. I bet they have that on eBay.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's pretty good.
It was scrapped early, so you're gonna have to pay a lot of money for that.
What do you remember about the auto show? There's some hostesses and some sales
guys.
He
provides hostesses for these auto shows, and the club owner guy's like, he loved cars and girls and cars. Those were his things. And he's got these. He's sitting in one of the cars. maybe his cars with two very beautiful girls that I guess are on his string, and he's telling them that they need to go out on dates with some of these like car company reps or something that are here for this auto show of some kind of businessmen. And one girl immediately catches on like, hey, these are prostitution gigs, and he keeps trying to assure her she doesn't have to sleep with the dudes. And she's like, I'm not gonna have sex for money, Paul. And the other girl's like, she isn't, but I will, or I am, something like that, right?
Yep.
So we see him trying to pimp these girls or convince them to be prostitutes.
And then there's some other interview guys that are explaining that he was what's the connection with the loan? He was in trouble with loan sharks at one point.
Maybe like I think of that article maybe told me that it was like maybe that like loan sharks with the local, there was some kind of local mob in Vancouver that had a name like the something gang, I forget, and he was in trouble with them.
Yeah, so we see Eric Roberts being dangled out of a window of a high-rise building.
Yes, that was pretty
And,
crazy.
by these two brutes, and they pull him up, and his suit is covered in vomit, which is extra gross.
He very much reminds me of, if I could name one other character that he reminds me of in a movie, it's James Woods in Casino as Lester Diamond.
Yep, that's a good choice. I definitely see that, like a pathetic sleaze.
Yeah, pathetic 70s pimp or late 70s pathetic kind of pimp.
And so then Dorothy Stratten recalls working at a Dairy Queen in high school and seeing Snyder come in a fur coat with a blonde woman who's also wearing a fur coat.
And he was famous for wearing a fur coat around Vancouver.
Eric Roberts is immediately smitten, and he immediately starts hitting on Mariel Hemingway.
I was thinking it'd be funny if she didn't really work at a Dairy Queen and Dairy Queen paid for product placement to be
Yeah.
the place where Paul Snyder meets her.
Do you have any good Dairy Queen memories?
Oh, when I was a kid, I loved Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Blizzard, and
The Peanut Buster Parfait was a personal favorite.
it was probably the first place I learned to like, definitely the first time I learned to like mustard on a hot dog was probably from Dairy Queen. Sounds
Do they
good
have,
now.
Any Dairy Queens in your part of the country?
There are a lot of Dairy Queens in California and some like further afield in Los Angeles. There is not one in Hollywood, not one nearby. I think the last time I had a Dairy Queen was off the freeway somewhere on a road trip here on the outskirts of LA, I think. I was like, ooh, I'm hungry, and there's a Dairy Queen.
I haven't had it in years. And then someone had brought us a bag of the cones that are like dipped in the chocolate.
Sure, dip cones.
See, you can buy those like at the store. So someone bought us like a box of dip cones as a gift.
Oh, wow.
But I haven't been inside a physical Dairy Queen in a long time. I certainly
The
didn't
dip
work
cones
at
are
one in
good.
high school, and I certainly wasn't hit on while working at one when I was in
I
high school.
wonder if you ever go to a place and order a dip cone, you say it ruins the fun, but one of my favorite things to do would be to go drive through, order a dip cone and a cup so that the cone lasts on your trip home. But then what I would do is I would immediately put the dip cone upside down in this ice cream cup and break off the cone and just eat the cone with ice cream in it on the drive home. Then I'd have the whole top of the cone and the chocolate for later with a spoon. Make two treats out of it.
That's pretty neat. I've never tried that before. Have you ever been dangled out of a window and vomited on yourself?
No. Oh, but there are a couple good vomiting parts to this movie.
Yeah, in this Dairy Queen scene, Snyder is just instantly awestruck by Dorothy Stratten.
Oh, yeah.
He's like hitting on her in front of the woman that he's with and everything.
This is
Not
where he
even
says
trying
that
to
he
hide
wants something soft, sweet, and white. You.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the girl that he's with is like, she's so young. And he's like, you gotta get them young. So it kind of instantly just cuts into their first date, and he's driving with her. And this is where he promises to get her a Mercedes.
And this is where we also hear in his car the "Do you think I'm sexy?"
Yeah,
by
which is
Rod
repeated a few
Stewart.
times.
Always in his car. He just drives
Oh.
around listening to it over and over again.
It's his jam.
Yes, and I was thinking that was hard. It must be in a single because that's hard to do with an 8-track, just to listen to the same tune over and over again.
Yeah, it's a single that just keeps going. Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, because the first time they play it, it'd been a while since I saw the movie, and I forgot they would play it again. I made the note that it would be funny if he just played it on repeat in his car. But then later on, it turns out he does play it on repeat in his car.
Oh, I missed that. I thought it was playing somewhere else, but yeah, I think you're right.
It's always in his car, I believe. And then I also found out, like, reading that her name was really Hoog Stratten, and they changed it for Playboy.
Whoa, how's that spelled?
HoogStrat, I think, with just one T-E-N. I made the note with two T's, but I think that's a mistype by me.
Hoog?
Hoog Stratton, yeah. Hoog.
What is she?
Some kind of Canadian ass shit.
Why?
Oh, the Hoogs, take off, you Hoogster.
Hoog.
Little Hoogster.
Whoa.
Hoog Stratton.
I'm going to refer to her that throughout the rest of this.
You should.
Out of respect.
Out of respect
for the departed. But yeah, Snyder's moving really fast. Like
he promises her a Mercedes.
Yeah.
Then is this where they go eat at the Italian restaurant where he brings over the salads for some reason? I guess they must have a salad bar or something, or he comes from somewhere with their food.
Yeah, he's got salads.
And he goes by that guy's
from a
table.
Salad bar. Yeah, some guy has been staring at her and giving her.
I didn't follow why he did that.
Yeah, he's been giving Stratten the eyes, and so he goes.
So this is our first, like, him being Paul Snyder being jealous scene then.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, he stops off at the guy's table who's been making eyes and tells him that his fly's unzipped and everyone's been looking at his dong.
The management wants to talk to you. Yeah, so it's first presented as very playful. I'm telling you, I really did like Snyder throughout most of this. You could almost say I liked him all the way up through the entire film, Roy. But he's very likable, even though he's just so pathetic. Yeah,
the movie, like, they made a TV movie of this too, with that came out like way closer to the death. It was way before this, which is another odd thing. Another reason maybe this movie didn't do well is that it had already been done with Jamie Lee Curtis as Dorothy Stratten, but in that one Dorothy Stratton's the lead and Paul Snyder's more the second lead. This is definitely the Paul Snyder movie.
It is.
Like, he's the protagonist, and it's like Taxi Driver. It's a character study, but he's definitely the star.
Yes, and you really get a sense that Fosse empathized with the Snyder.
Yeah, understood him and could show you both, what was crazy about him and sort of, that could really empathize with him. And really, Paul Snyder isn't that much different, or he's very different, but he's also has a lot in common with the other protagonists post Cabaret that Fosse would do on film. With his version of Lenny Bruce is a lot like his version of himself in All That Jazz is a lot like Paul Snyder, all very like womanizing but jealous, out of control characters.
Interesting.
Insecure.
Well, it says here during production.
Short guys.
Short guy. How tall was Bob Fosse?
He was 5'8".
Yeah, it says here during production, he pulled Roberts aside at one point and said, "Don't you get it? You're playing me if I wasn't successful."
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. It's like Lenny Bruce is Bob Fosse successful in another style of thing with a similar background. Lenny Bruce grew up in the burlesque clubs, or doing comedy as an MC in burlesque clubs. But it's a very unflattering portrait of Lenny Bruce. Like, I don't know if Lenny Bruce is comedy, but he makes Lenny Bruce out to be like super unfunny and shit. Like, it's really crazy.
Yeah, I never saw that movie all the way through. I just remember seeing pieces and being very bored and uninterested in it.
Yeah, I would say each movie he did after Cabaret was a little better than the last. Like, and this one is better than either of them to me. But most people would say I think All That Jazz was really good. Lenny was a big hit though, and Dustin Hoffman's fantastic in it.
It's
just
interesting.
as whether or not but once, like, another thing with the up and comers in this movie versus stars is like Dustin Hoffman did not enjoy working with Bob Fosse. Really thought Bob Fosse just kind of wanted a puppet, not to collaborate. And then, Richard Dreyfuss was supposed to star in All That Jazz and quit way early on, deciding like he didn't believe in the project or something.
Well, he was a choreographer, so he did like puppets. He liked,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
yeah, like
he
for
liked
sure. Like I mean, you
precision.
watch his first movie, Sweet Charity, like he just makes Shirley MacLaine look exactly like his wife, who
Yeah.
had been in the stage production of the movie.
I think it's interesting that this is a guy he was a song and dance man who made musicals and basically character studies or portraits of
It really seems like
complicated
after
characters.
Cabaret was so huge that he kind of wanted to prove himself. And that kind of movie, like Lenny, you know, he was probably very inspired by the foreign films to make a serious Hollywood movie that would make him a big deal, not as a song and dance man.
Yeah.
But even that movie has like a lot of numbers in it in a way with production or just production seeing things with burlesque clubs and stuff, because Lenny's lady or wife Honey was a stripper, and they cast like an actual stripper who had also been in some stuff, like a Vegas showgirl, nude review girl, Valerie Perrine as Honey and Lenny.
Interesting.
Seems like here it's like after he'd been nominated for best director 3 times in a row, I think, and with his movies, and won the first time for Cabaret, that he used all that power on this movie to just not have a big star as Roberts. I mean, as Sir Paul.
I saw a clip of Fosse saying that he thought Star 80 was his best movie.
I think so. I can also see another reason I would say it's probably didn't do well is because it is so similar to his other movies in a way, but just even darker. Well, I don't know if it's actually dark. Well, I guess there's murder, so it is darker than Lenny. But
I'll get into this maybe more when we sum it up at the end. But I really do feel like this movie was very ahead of its time in many ways. And it kind of predicted, I don't know, I think it kind of predicted the 90s, a lot of movies from the 90s and true crime movies, and just a certain style of true crime movie that was big for a while.
Well, it's 9 years after, right? Is it 9 years? Somewhere in there after Taxi Driver.
Yeah, I mean, you have those similar guys.
Yeah, I think that was probably an inspiration to him here too, was to do a character study of a killer or something. But yeah, this is very much like a darker version of his other movies, and so critics might have felt they'd already seen it and given it bad buzz that got into cognoscenti kind of turned against the movie. And then for the average Joe in 1983, there's like, you know what, I don't feel like going to see actors I've never heard of be disgusting.
Well, let's go back to this restaurant scene.
If they were going to see a movie about a nude chick, they were far more into Flashdance or something, I guess. Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the restaurants.
I know exactly what you mean, though. Like, this is a downer. So in one sense, like it has a foot firmly planted in the downer 70s tragic ending movies. Yes. And then it's kind of looking ahead in its style, I think, to something that's not yet to come.
You know, as far as looking ahead of style, it does, you know, like this is before Color of Money, which is the first like kind of wall-to-wall pop song Scorsese movie. Mm-hmm. I guess that you had Mean Streets in a way, but the way this movie uses pop music was very cool.
And just diegetic club music always playing.
Yeah, like the music. This is a movie with a cool soundtrack,
which again puts you like right in 78 and shows you like the vast difference between 83 and 78. You hear like YMCA and
the early Billy Joel, or I don't know how early Billy Joel hits.
Oh yeah, we're almost to that scene, actually, the prom scene.
Oh yes, so one of my favorites.
Back in the first date, Snyder does mention the salad bar that he just came from, because he says, I found something in the coleslaw, and he gives her a ring on the first date, which is a flag, girls, if you're listening. and he also just cannot stop staring at her. He's completely.
What kind of ring is it?
I don't remember. What
Topaz.
There you go. I'm sure that has some significance too if we looked it up, but there's no time.
It really was what he gave her.
Yeah.
I don't know if there, maybe there is some kind of like, did you know what topaz is?
And I think like you can also start to see this, that Snyder sees her also as this vast untapped resource. He's not just in love with her. I mean, do you really think that he's in love with her?
It's a good question. I mean, obviously he does fall in love with her because of how the movie ends.
Yeah, I think
it's like if she was just another girl on his string, he wouldn't be that. I don't think he would have done what he did.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, before this movie takes place, before any of the events we see, he had lived in Los Angeles before for a while and had been a pimp in Los Angeles.
Oh, I didn't
And
know that.
he ended up moving back to Vancouver, I believe, because one of his hoes, she robbed him and he was broke. And so he ended up going back to Vancouver because he got busted out by being robbed by a hooker. And he had, before Dorothy Stratten, had tried to get a girl into Playboy and it didn't work.
That's awesome. I had no idea about any of that stuff.
Yeah, it was all in that article.
So yeah, I mean, that's great. This has been his dream for a while, and he finally found his girl, his special lady. So is she 18 at this point?
I guess so. She must be, yeah, she must be like 17 or 18.
Yeah.
She must be 18, because so this whole movie takes place, like, I guess over like a year and a half or something.
Yeah. Well, she died in 80, right?
Yeah, so we start in 78. So I guess, yeah, she's about 18, if not just slightly younger. I don't know.
Yeah. Where her mother allows Snyder to take her to the prom.
The scene here where she goes to her house for prom and we meet Carol Baker is so good as the mom in this movie, by the way.
Yeah, she is great.
Like, and just her face acting and stuff, what she can do with a look. You just get so much of her estimation of Paul Snyder and her misgivings. Good question.
Giant.
Go ahead. Oh yeah, I've never seen all of Giant.
I was looking at her filmography, but that was one of the only ones that stuck out. But the picture on her IMDb is this old glamorous black and white picture of her as a young woman, and she's beautiful. She looks like
Dorothy. Oh, I know her from Baby Doll. I didn't realize that was her. She's the main girl in Baby Doll, which is, I think, sucks.
I've never heard of it.
It's based on a Tennessee Williams movie with what's his face, Eli Wallach and her, I believe, are the stars.
But yeah, this scene is nice. The son, the little brother character, can't stand him instantly.
And is watching Telly Savalas on Kojak.
That's right. Yes. And Snyder says he's
which I believe this would have been right after the end of Kojak's run, or right at the end. And we see that this is probably a syndicated episode of Kojak because it's still daylight. And though I guess prom is in the spring, so it might have been daylight outside when Kojak, but Kojak came on late, like I believe like at like 10 p.m. or something. I don't know what time it came on in Vancouver, but probably the same time it went on everywhere in the Western time and Pacific time. So this is probably a syndicated episode of Kojak, because then it's followed by cartoons.
Yeah, there's some Looney Tunes, right? Some Roadrunner.
So yeah, the brother is very unimpressed, but who is impressed with Paul Snyder, and in one of the running creepy things in the movie where you're just like, oh God, don't let this happen, is, and you know, like he'd already said, you got to get him young, is the little sister Eileen of Dorothy Stratten, Hoog Stratten.
Yeah. Is that her name in the movie? Is it Eileen?
Yeah, I believe so.
So the real little sister, her name was Louise. Yeah, she is Eileen in the movie. So do you know the story of Louise Stratten?
I believe I do know the story of Louise Hoog Stratten.
Yeah.
We'll get to what happens to her after the movie for those who are unfamiliar.
And maybe I'm wrong, but I swear her name was Louise. Yeah,
you might be right. This was another thing. It was different. Well, I don't know about the name of the girl, but there were a lot of differences, a lot of very similar things. Like it was almost the same movie, the TV movie.
Mm-hmm.
But in the TV movie, there isn't her mom, it's her aunt.
Oh, strange.
Yeah, it's very strange.
They just didn't want to hurt people's feelings.
I think so. It was a lot closer to the event. And it has a totally different version of they both have fake Peter Bogdanoviches, but they're different. The other one uses real names of movies, though. This one will note that it uses real names of TV shows, but not the names of any of the real movies she was in.
I had a feeling that you would watch that made-for-TV one. We don't like to talk about this too much on our show, but there is another Eric Roberts podcast. Now,
I thought about listening to their episode on this. I did not.
Now, would you say that the EsotEric Eric Roberts podcast is more of a Star 80 project or more of a Death of a Centerfold type of project?
I'd say that we're the Star 80.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Seeing them both. Oh, yeah.
Because we bring the Flash, Roy.
That's right.
The Class and the Flash.
Well, they have a theme song and we don't.
Yeah, I've
But
heard
we
that
use
theme
only
song.
grabs from the films, which I think really does. We don't only do that sometimes, but we like to use more pop music and stuff.
So we have this great scene here where he's getting ready to take her to the prom. Did you want to add anything else about that scene?
Well, we see their prom pictures they get taken together, maybe before or after this, of them, her and her dress. Well, he gets Eileen flowers too.
That's right.
Which is our first indication. And he's like,
Gardenias.
that Eileen, what a knockout. And all the girls in this house are knockouts, he says to the mom. And the son's like, more bullshit.
Total ass kisser.
And when he gets in there, the mom walks in on him and he's just immediately puts his feet up on their coffee table. And she's like, get your feet off that table.
That's right.
It's total born in a barn action.
Eric Roberts is just killing it throughout all of this stuff.
And also we see the picture of the prom picture of them together. She just towers over him.
Now, you said that's how it was in real life.
Yeah, I believe so.
That's great.
And the thing with all of the protagonists of the Fosse movies, like remember when you watched All That Jazz, when he realizes she's going out to dinner and he asks her with a dancer and he asks her if the dancer is straight or gay, and she says he's straight. He's like, I bet he's tall.
So do we remember how tall Eric Roberts is?
In real life? No, I don't.
In real life, Eric Roberts is 5'10", Mariel Hemingway 5'11". Now I wonder how tall her grandfather Ernest.
Well, even more key with this movie, her sister kind of has her own Dorothy Stratten-esque misadventures, right? Like when we grew
Eileen?
up. No, Margot Hemingway.
Yes.
When we were in like high school and stuff, I don't ever remember when we were kids ever hearing of Margot Hemingway. But all of a sudden they were like in the early True Hollywood stories and stuff like that. One of them was about Margot Hemingway.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess before Mariel Hemingway was famous and an actor, her older sister was like a supermodel in the 70s. And then and was also in movies too. And then, so her sister would have been famous before Dorothy Stratten was famous. And her sister then like in the 80s, like got depressed and gained like 100 pounds and then lost weight and was in like direct-to-video movies in the early 90s, like erotic direct-to-video softcore thrillers, and then OD'd on pills in the early 90s, like 1993 or something. And it was a lot of people think it was suicide, and Mariel Hemingway has maintained that it was not. My main memory of Mariel Hemingway from when we were kids is from being in Superman 4.
That's right. And that was like the last big movie that she was in that I remember.
Yeah. What's funny, she campaigned so hard for this role, she didn't work again for 2 years after it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe she was wrecked by it.
Maybe. She was physically wrecked later in that the breast implants ended up poisoning her. She had to have them removed.
Oh, geez.
Like in the 1989, 1990 era or something.
Margot Hemingway was the 5th to commit suicide in 4 generations of Hemingways.
Yeah, because the grandfather, of course, did as well.
Yes. Do you remember how Ernest Hemingway committed suicide?
Kind of like Eric Roberts in this film, as Sir Paul did, right?
Yeah, I wonder how Mariel felt about that.
There are a couple of crazy things, that I wanted to bring up, because there's that similarity which of course she probably didn't have to be on set when he did that, right? But
oh yeah, that's true. They probably had a body double.
I watched a little bit of Fosse Verdon, that TV series, the miniseries about Bob Fosse with Sam Rockwell and Michelle Williams as his wife.
How is that?
Gwen Verdon. It's up and down. I watched. I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but it's kind of all right in parts too. It's very up and down. Sam Rockwell's very well cast as Bob Fosse.
Yeah.
And gosh, like in the first episode, it starts with them making Sweet Charity, and Shirley MacLaine kind of shows up and talks to Gwen Verdon, and Michelle Williams as Gwen Verdon looks more like Shirley MacLaine than the lady playing Shirley MacLaine looks like Shirley MacLaine.
Whoa.
Which goes to show how good a job they did making Shirley MacLaine look like Gwen Verdon in Sweet Charity. But the crazy thing in that is there's a scene where before they do Bob Fosse's heart attack, there's a scene where he thinks about committing suicide. He's all drunk and pilled out, and he's won the Oscars and stuff, and he thinks about throwing himself off like a balcony, and they do a musical number of people encouraging him to commit suicide because it'll make him like a legend and like a huge forever star, you know.
Yeah.
And she comes in and sings to him about how he should kill himself because he'll be such a big deal. And I was like, she was Heath Ledger's girlfriend when Heath Ledger killed himself and then won an Oscar.
Yeah.
A grisly choice to make to do that role.
Yeah, that's weird, right?
Yeah, weird.
I don't know how I feel about that, Roy. Or sorry, Paul Snyder Jr.
Kind of calls in question how she might have been feeling about Heath Ledger.
So PSJ.
Yes, sir.
We see Snyder take Dorothy to the prom in the film Star 80.
Yes. And we know that she is not a virgin when they go out. She has had sex with one time, she said, with a football player. And it was over so fast. Rumors. And then spread rumors that she was a terrible lay. And she wasn't even entirely sure they had sex.
Yeah, she's really good in that scene.
Came so fast.
Very childish and naive. You know, the description of the Playboy playmate. Wholesome.
Or the description. Yeah, this Dorothy Stratten. It's kind of how the article made her out to be too, but it was kind of different from the way Jamie Lee Curtis played her as more sophisticated, a smarter character. This movie, she's really like sweet and dopey.
Yeah.
She's what they call a cow. And I guess her biggest problem with it, when people described her biggest problem as a playmate, was that she did tend to get chubby. They're always having to tell her how to watch her weight.
Did you watch any footage of her? I saw her on a clip of her on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in like 80 or 79.
No, I watched, we'll get to them. I've only seen her in fictional things.
Yeah, I don't know. I would place her somewhere between the dingbat and the sophisticated.
This movie really which is another thing that made me think they would not do this today the same way, is that there's so much nudity and so little substance to her character.
Yeah.
She's very like, one note dingbat. Yeah, a real cow, as the British would say.
Well, there's a great moment calling back to the football player who called her a lousy lay.
That's what I was setting up. Yeah, the prom.
He says hello to Dorothy on the dance floor at the prom.
Well, they play "Don't Go Changing." I love you just the way you are.
Don't go changing.
How good was that prom band?
Awesome.
They were fucking awesome.
They were, yeah. I thought it was just Billy Joel because you hear the song before you see the guy.
That's right. I thought it was too. And then they had the horn section, which is when he sneak attacks the guy.
Yeah. See, I
so the guy says a guy says hi to her in a kind of weird way, and of course she's brought this like total guy in his 20s with a big mustache to her prom. And the football player is much taller than Roberts, and Roberts immediately picks it out as that's the football player.
Yep.
And he feels crazy about
jealousy demon.
Yeah, and when they're playing "Just the Way I Love You, Just the Way You Are," and the horn section comes on, he busts out a little penknife or something and like stabs the guy in the ass
or in the side.
What does the guy say? He says something like, "Very funny, eh?" It's probably our most Canadian moment of the movie.
Yeah. Do you think Roberts attempted any kind of Canadian accent here in this?
Not that I could detect. He might have.
Yeah.
But it was so natural.
We know this struggle, Roy. We played Canadians before.
Oh yeah.
And
I did not attempt a Canadian accent, but my character wasn't Canadian.
That's right. You didn't have to.
I didn't have to.
I didn't really try very hard. I just tried to go for a flat accent. But yeah, Roberts just sounds like Roberts here, which is fine.
I didn't have many lines.
Yeah, the stabbing. I mean, it did remind me of when Pagoda stabs Gene Hackman.
Oh, yes.
Tenenbaums.
Very
I wonder
much.
if that wasn't a reference, just the little tiny pocket knife that gets pulled out. The way he pulls it out is just like the same way he pulls it out in Tenenbaums. And we can get into this later. I mean, this is a movie that was also referenced by a lot of guys that would come later.
Oh, whom?
I mean, I think that there's a lot of Star 80 in Boogie Nights.
I was going to bring this up that I think that I know of Boogie Nights is a movie some people just love. I think this is a better movie than Boogie Nights to me.
Yeah, it's less derivative and has just it keeps your, I just feel like it holds tension better.
To me, Paul Thomas Anderson, sometimes I find him funny. I haven't finished watching Licorice Pizza yet. I really enjoyed what I saw. I saw the beginning of Licorice Pizza, but not all of it. But a lot of times, Paul Thomas Anderson's sense of humor is not mine, and a lot of the jokes in Boogie Nights fall flat. Whereas in this movie, I'm not even sure if it's trying to be funny sometimes, but I find Star 80 very funny.
Yes, and that's the charm of it, is that it's that, again, it feels futuristic to me. This black humor at times, or just like the desperation of Snyder.
Snyder really cracks me up. We have a buddy, Laramiah,
sinister funny.
And this movie is one of the ways he and I like bonded over. We both enjoy Star 80.
Yeah,
a lot.
Well, you play. When was this? Would this be like 20 years ago almost?
Yeah, almost 20 years ago.
Because you did play a kind of a seducer type sleaze guy in a sketch one time. We'll call him Larry Myers. Well, Larry Myers just loves these desperate, pathetic guys. He likes the old gills.
Yes, as do I. Yeah,
we all do. Yeah, but man, Roberts just does a version of it that it's almost like other people have done it since, but man, it's pretty unique.
His is so much emotion and insecure yelling. When we started, we have a friend that probably the seeds of this podcast was in a friend of ours, Ronnie, doing an impression of Eric Roberts from the movie Best of the Best.
Right.
But when I started trying to somewhat imitate Roberts, I'm not as good at it as Ronnie is, but it was definitely this movie I had in mind. It's kind of be like him on the phone, be like, oh, he's there.
Yeah, and
I'll show all of you. Fuck you.
It's a movie that was always around, and I'm like you, like I always loved these kind of movies like this that were dark and sleazy and twisted.
Yeah, this is definitely the kind of movie I love,
it.
But my father would hate if he's ever seen it. He hates a movie where there's no one to root for.
Yeah.
But I don't care about that. I love these like depictions of some like real bad life kind of guy if it's done in a fun way. And this to me movie, this is a fun movie.
I do too, like because we like tragedy and we like anti-heroes, and I think there's kind of
he's certainly a tragic anti-hero.
I don't know, I feel like people feel, I don't know, they just get bad vibes from it, but
he's not even an anti-hero, he's just a bad guy. But he's the protagonist.
He's the protagonist, yes. He's not really a hero in any sense, but he's a protagonist. He's compelling. He's not necessarily anything more.
This movie's after Raging Bull, which is the kind of the king of that kind of protagonist in a way.
Yeah.
This is from the same year as King of Comedy.
King of Comedy is 83. Yeah.
I'm not sure. Is it 82 or 83? Even 81. Maybe this is after King of Comedy. It's post Rupert Pupkin.
Back in the plot, I don't remember much else from the prom. It seems like it goes right into this sequence of Snyder taking the Polaroids.
Oh yeah, they have the date. We've already seen him play the at his apartment. They've already slept together because we've seen where he seduces her with and she talks about having the big hands.
Yeah, which
she thinks she has big hands. So we get her insecurities. She doesn't think much of herself. Kind of in classic prostitution form. She has a low self-esteem.
Well, these are two insecure characters.
Yeah, she's kind of portrayed as not that bright, low self-esteem.
But man, Snyder does his best to really boost that self-esteem, doesn't he? He's taking all these Polaroids, and she's looking at his Playboys and kind of trying to mimic the poses in that.
He does what you call the love bombing.
Yeah, he's love bombing her. This is a love bombing movie for sure.
It is like and that's very much in that article is kind of about not the love bombing, but what this is a story of is a woman as like basically, or rather a man who just gets attacked and superseded by people who are more successful than him in life doing the same thing he did.
Yes, that's well said. And this is really stated coming up pretty soon. Put a bookmark on that because there's a scene where he's talking to the mother that really, really states that idea. But here, before we get to that, she forgets to talk to her mother because it's late at night, as Snyder.
This was hilarious. So this is prom night where he's taking these Polaroids over in his apartment.
Oh, okay. It's the same night.
I think so.
That makes sense.
Maybe I could be wrong about that, but maybe it is.
What's really late and she forgot to call her mom.
It's 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
And when she calls her mom, she says she's staying the night at a friend's house, a girlfriend. I forget the name of the girlfriend, but it's 4:30 in the morning. And she tell her excuse for not calling earlier. She thought her mom would be asleep.
Yeah.
So just one of the
Maybe her mom wakes up at 4:30 in the morning.
Maybe. Like I was like, it's even later now.
Canadians are weird. I don't know.
Sometimes some people wake up really early, but 4:30 seems excessive for a non-farmer.
But she lies to her mother very well. I mean, I thought it seemed pretty realistic.
Oh, just the acting, or would you buy her lie?
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't buy that lie.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. I guess she gets off the hook.
Oh no, I'm not with him, Mom.
Yeah.
The
next thing we see is a professional photographer
who I believe was played by, is this the one that's played by like Hugh Hefner's son or brother or something? Or is that a later photographer in the movie?
Yes, his name is Keith Hefner.
There you go. He looks too old to be Hugh Hefner's son.
He's got to be maybe Hugh's brother, because it says he was born in 29.
Oh, wow. Yeah, he's got to be not Hugh Hefner's son, I hope.
I don't know. Maybe somehow. Maybe it's his father.
So Hugh Hefner is immortal.
Yeah.
There's these claims to be dead, but there's a series on A&E right now of Secrets of the Playboy Mansion. A little synchronicity with this show is that, and it's all about a dark look at Playboy, like reassessing Playboy and Hugh Hefner as a bad thing.
Yeah.
And there's this woman that dated Hugh Hefner in the 70s and early 80s that was a Playboy bunny or something, that was his girlfriend for a long stretch, named Sandra Theodore. And if you look at her, I think maybe even right now you might want to Google a picture of this woman in 2022.
Sandra Theodore?
Because I swear to geez, Louise, that it's just Hugh Hefner in drag. She looks exactly fucking like him.
Oh my goodness. That is hilarious.
Yeah, so he's like secretly
JSL.
bombing his own anti-him documentary.
Wow, that's awesome. Man, you really went, this is really esoteric. You really did go all the way, Paul Snyder Jr.
I did some research on this. I was fascinated by both this story and Bob Fosse in a way.
Yeah, me too. And that, I mean, we'll get to the Bogdanovich stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a story I only ever just kind of I had never seen Star 80, so I didn't know the full story of that.
Which is odd because I thought we watched Star 80 together, but I apparently not. I bought it on DVD sight unseen back when we still lived in Oklahoma.
Oh, I definitely remember the stuff. Like I remember maybe the first 15 minutes of it.
Maybe you fell asleep or something.
Yeah, it just seems like we always
feel like I saw it over at your house, but it
drifted
was
away to doing other things. I don't know.
True,
but
I mean, you went off with your own Dorothy Hoogstrut and left me there with my cock in my hand, ejaculating to Paul Snyder.
You're hanging out with your buddy Keith Hefner.
Yeah, John Carpenter, and
who is the younger
Bob
brother
Crane
of Hugh.
And
in this scene here, he is we're in his studio. And he's backseat directed by
Merrick Roberts.
Paul Snyder. Who just
I'm
keeps
really pissing him off.
Yeah, he eventually just tells him to leave the room.
Yeah, and he's like, they go and have a little discussion, and Paul Snyder comes back and says, "I'm gonna go wait in the other room. Too many directors."
So the plan is to submit these photographs to Playboy.
There's that weird backdrop he uses that's just all these different girls' names.
Yeah,
that was a weird photography backdrop.
Yeah, that was a very Fosse-esque backdrop.
It sure was. I wonder if that was the real one, or if that was, I would not be surprised if that was chosen for the movie.
Yeah. So then we see a hilarious clip of another photographer. No, it's him. It's actually him. It's Hefner's brother.
In some weird ass lighting. I was gonna bring up some of these interviews. The lighting is so crazy. Yeah, it's just his eyes are lit, and he has very expressive eyes.
In the scene prior to that,
his acting is with his eyes is like, he seems like a real guy. Like you would believe it was the real photographer.
That's so funny.
He seems all pissed about Paul Snyder so this really happened, yeah, that Paul Snider took those photos he took to a photographer that had turned him down before of taking pictures of her.
Yes.
And he used these as proof of concept that she was good enough for this other guy to photograph. And then he sent that guy's photographs to Playboy because the photographer gets a finder's fee. So this guy got cut out.
He got
that he's
cut out,
pissed
and the
about.
finder's fee from Playboy was $1,000.
Ah,
So Playboy is instantly interested in Dorothy Stratten.
yes.
They want to fly her to LA to take more test shots, but they need parental consent.
Yeah, this is our first time we see Cliff Robertson as Hugh Hefner, and he's got the eyepiece looking at photographs of maybe
That's right.
different girl at first. Maybe not. Maybe it is Dorothy Stratten.
No, it's her because he's asking questions about her, and he
Oh,
asks
yeah.
her age.
That's her age.
So this is the confusion, is that she's 18, but she needs parental consent. So I guess there must have been different laws in Canada
Very possibly.
at that time.
Yes, this is the big scene where he goes to Carol Baker to get the parental consent.
Yes, this is another great scene with her and Roberts.
Yes.
And he tells her he has a feeling that she's going to be a big star.
He's like, do you know who reads Playboy? Producers, casting directors.
Yes. Like we were saying earlier, he knows all the tricks and all the con games. He knows all the bullshit. So where all the other guys were successful and he was a loser, I mean, he still knows he wants to be part of that world. He wants to be the slickster.
Yeah, and this will come back. I'll bring this up again later if you remember in this kind of pyramid of slicksters. He's the bottom slickster. Hugh Hefner's in the middle, and Peter Bogdanovich will be on top.
Yeah, good call. And you really feel his lust for the fame and the fortune here. And he
Slicksters
says,
and daddies for Dorothy Stratten.
and he turns to the mother and he says, Robert says, I do love her.
And
the
she
mother
says, I could have sworn you said it, I love it.
Yes. And so
because before he says I love her, I do love her, he goes off on this tangent of all the things they're going to have and how cool they're going to be. And you can see this is really his dream of being famous.
That's right.
He just has no talent other than pimping.
He just
and
wants
so
to
he's
exploit.
he's like, we're going to be in every restaurant and people are going to look at us and we're going to have all these things. Then he stops himself and he's like, I really do love her.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's funny. I could have sworn you said I love it.
So she refuses to give consent.
Yes, sure. So she claimed. She in another very strangely lit shot of the interview with Carol Baker. So yeah, we see when she says she refuses to give consent, it's in one of those interview sequences. And she's like in the kitchen and there are no lights on.
Yeah.
It's
So
very moody.
Here's another interesting thing is that in the Johnny Carson interview, when he's asking like how the Playboy thing happened, she explains that her mother was in Europe at the time. And that she just, I can't remember what she says, if she asked her mother from afar or just like didn't get consent because her mother was not there. But it was a different angle for sure. Something about her mother not being there. And so they just left and went to LA.
So she really didn't sign off on it.
I don't know. It depends on what story you want to believe.
Well, they say that if she's saying on Carson, her mom didn't sign off. So I thought it was just kind of one of those unknowables where maybe the mom after the fact was claiming that she never signed off on all this happening, but maybe
I thought that she was implying, the mother was implying that it was forged by
She definitely was.
Snyder. Okay.
Yeah, she was definitely implying that. But I just kind of questioned whether that was the truth or not. But apparently it was, according to what you're saying.
Okay, so according to my research, the legal age of majority in British Columbia at the time was 19. And according to the Wikipedia, it just says that Stratten had to persuade her mother to sign the model release form. So again, it's foggy. But at any rate, in the movie, she gets on the airplane alone. Robert stays behind, or Snyder stays behind, right?
Yes, he does not go to LA with her.
And so there's this long distance thing that starts here where she's in LA starting her career. She meets Hef for the first time. And this is another Boogie Nights thing where Boogie Nights directly ripped this off, where Hefner is sitting down across from her and explaining that the magazine is a family.
And here's where he gives her his daddy rap.
Just like Burt Reynolds says.
Yeah, he's the bigger pimp than Roberts, basically.
Yeah, and then we see her working as a bunny waitress at a club.
I didn't realize that the Playmates, I guess he needed to get her a job to
So
earn
maybe it's
money.
just a club
So he
that
got
he
her a
owned?
job in one of their clubs.
Okay, I didn't
One
know
of
if
their-
there was like Playboy nightclubs.
Yeah, there are Playboy clubs
Okay.
and bunnies, and there are lots of bad things that happen with these bunnies, of course. I mean, we'll get into like the cast of characters you could hang out with at the Playboy Mansion. Wow.
Now, Paul Snyder Jr., what's our protagonist doing during this sequence? Back in
He's got
Vancouver.
another hooker.
Yeah.
Like and she refers to Dorothy Hugh Stratten as his number one when she calls.
Yep.
He's also boozing at like a strip club where we get another very talented stripper that seems like a dancer that Fosse had a lot of fun casting in the background. And Paul Snyder Sr., much
Yeah.
like Paul Snyder Jr., likes to have a good scotch.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. We see some Keenan Ivory weigh-ins.
Yes, as a very shitty comic, which also reminded me of the shitty comedy in Lenny.
Yeah, and he's doing the classic 80s routine.
Black guys be like this and white guys be like this, but it's about it. But it also, it is does have like an element of being like in the movie or foreshadowing, right? Because he's talking about how black guys won't be killers like white guys.
Oh, true. Yeah, and it's also intercut with Snyder and the black dancer in bed.
That's right. And it also reminds of In All That Jazz, where he keeps watching Cliff Gorman as Lenny Bruce instead of Dustin Hoffman doing the routine about death.
Yeah, and the 5 stages of grief.
Yes, and coming to, or not grief, but coming to grips with your own impending death.
Yeah.
When you find out you're going to die
and so forth.
Just a quick note that Cliff Gorman, who plays Lenny Bruce in the Fake movie and All That Jazz, that's who Bob Fosse wanted to play Lenny Bruce in Lenny because
Lenny was a play.
Yes, that Cliff Gorman was the star of.
So this woman that Snyder is cheating on Dorothy with, there's a nice scene here where she tells him what she likes about him is that he just plain tries harder.
Puts
Snyder,
in an 8-hour day in 15 minutes.
Yes.
But you also feel like the way she refers to her as his number one, that means that he's pimping her too.
Oh yeah.
That's some more you're my bottom bitch kind of shit. Dorothy Stratton's his bottom bitch.
And so another thing that he's up to while Dorothy's down there in LA is this creepy scene that you had mentioned earlier of Snyder hanging out with the sister at the carnival.
Yes. Where he takes her to the carnival and we get Sookie by Steppenwolf. And you're just like, oh gosh, he'd already said you've got to start him young.
Yeah, it's pretty creepy. And there's a scene where they're on a
merry-go-round carousel.
Yeah, but the bumper cars where he says something about the Mercedes. He was like, we got the best one. This is a Mercedes.
Oh, you're right. I forgot about that.
So just his obsession with the Mercedes and the
yes.
Status. He's obsessed with status. Around this time, Dorothy is offered the Centerfold by Hefner.
That's right. She's not going to be something. There's some kind of like, there's like an anniversary or something edition every year or something. And then he's like, you're not going to be that, but you're going to be the Centerfold for August or something.
The August Centerfold. Now, everything that I read about Stratten, and well, she also mentions it in this movie, is they took these test pictures forever. Like 6 months of it. She wasn't actually in Playboy. It's just crazy to me to think that they fly her down there, they make her a bunny, they do all this stuff, and they don't actually feature her. I mean, was she featured in earlier editions of the magazine?
I don't know.
Maybe she was, but the way that it talks about it in the movie and the stuff that I've read was just like
they just hold off on all this shit.
They took thousands of pictures of her. It's just crazy how patient they were.
Yeah.
They would find somebody and be like, let's throw her on there in the next.
That's what I always thought, but no, apparently not.
Yeah.
You're right. That was a real like inside look at Playboy.
So Stratten shares this good news about the Centerfold thing with Snyder on the phone. And instantly he's making plans to come see her and making plans for them to get married in Vegas. And you can tell that she's very hesitant about that.
They do this thing when he's like, we'll be a team for life. And they bring in the like the suspenseful music with her misgiving face. But then they push after that into like an end of the movie scene again of Snyder talking to himself with that suspense music playing. So it's like kind of a weird thing where they have it both ways and don't push too hard on the marriage thing with the suspenseful music, because they go into a more dramatic or melodramatic scene with it, because it is pretty heavy melodrama music.
And then he shows up in LA all
That's-
psyched.
Yeah,
ready
and
to
we get
hang
the
out.
Cripple Creek playing by the band on the soundtrack.
Yeah, we
Kind
get
of a
some
Canadian
music.
rock reference.
And they're riding in a limo. She picks them up at the airport, and they're riding in a limo sent by
Hef.
Playboy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they're
she,
at the
she says,
Playboy.
isn't that kind of embarrassing? But no, he loves the limo ride.
He's all into it. Yeah. And then we see him at the Playboy mansion with her schmoozing various people.
And we meet this actor who has I forget his name in the movie, Vince Edwards or something like that. But I knew immediately that it was supposed to be Robert Blake. The guy looks so much like Robert Blake, except for he's way too tall, but the face is like, they nail it. And they talk about his TV show being canceled, which would be referring to Beretta.
There you go.
But this is where I just wanted to bring up that imagine you're at the Playboy Mansion in this era and you could hang out with Robert Blake, Bill Cosby, Roman Polanski, and Paul Snyder all at the same time.
And possibly Telly Savalas.
But just think about the crimes committed by Cosby, Polanski, Snyder, and Blake.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the super group, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And
like
you want to talk about like, do you think that
sexual
that creepy, untoward things happened at the Playboy Mansion? It's like, look at who was hanging. Some of our biggest creeps. Creeps and murderers.
The Creep Boy Mansion.
Yes.
Well, Telly gets mentioned again.
We wants to know if Telly's there.
Snyder finally meets Hefner as Hero.
Do you think that maybe he and Telly Savalas really did meet at some point when he was in LA before?
Well, yeah, now that you mention him being down there, I guarantee you they had a moment somewhere, probably
that he's
very
overplayed.
brief.
Yeah. And
in his mind, it's like they're best buddies or old friends.
That's right. Yeah, because he asks if Telly's around, and this is where he quotes a long quote, or maybe a couple of different quotes from Hugh Hefner interviews to Hugh Hefner, and Hugh Hefner immediately doesn't like him.
Mode.
Yeah.
And he also meets another centerfold that he also fanboys out with.
Oh yes. Do you remember the bands she likes? She's a fictional one, Bobo Weller or Bobo Wells or something. Bobo Weller. And this is this lady was quite good in the movie and quite hot to me. This is the only movie I think she was ever in.
Bobo. He says that she likes Rod Stewart, Linda Ronstadt.
And
I don't remember.
One more. Boz Scaggs.
Oh yeah. Superstar Boz Scaggs. Dorothy is also introduced to a producer.
Going to introduce her to the director who they're going to make a movie called Ball Bearings.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a stand-in for a movie she appeared in called Skateland USA, which I didn't watch it for this, but I've seen it before, maybe a year ago with our buddy Dustin Laker. We watched the Skateland USA movie. It stars Scott Baio, and then it has Patrick Swayze in it. Frankly, I don't even remember Dorothy Stratten being in it.
Oh, I was going to ask you how her roller skating skills were.
Apparently she was a very good roller skater.
It's funny because we see a scene later where Mariel Hemingway as Stratten is roller skating and she's very into it and everything. And
that's just a thing that was known about Stratten, was that she was a good skater.
Weird. If you've seen They All Laughed, there's a roller skating scene in that.
Yes, I watched that for this.
Her skating is very lackluster in that. She just is kind of limp. She didn't do anything that was incredible.
That whole movie's kind of limp.
I kind of dig it.
I did not really like They All Laughed. I was like, oh, this is kind of wow, amazing that Audrey Hepburn kind of came out of semi-retirement for this.
Yeah. I don't know. I like They All Laughed.
Interesting.
But I have some notes on that too that we'll get to as we progress down into the plot.
Okay. I was gonna ask because you told me I had a joke prepared that ruins because you've seen They All Laughed, because you watched a different. You texted me that you were watching At Long Last Love, a different Bogdanovich movie, and I was gonna tease you for being a shitty researcher and watching the one she wasn't in.
Yeah.
But it turns out that I'm the fool.
I didn't really watch that much of That Long Last Love, but I'll return to it someday, maybe. So we have, this schmoozing at the Playboy Mansion. And then later that night, Snyder is just beating himself up for quoting Hef like the way that he did. And he's very.
He has in his outfit. When he's talking about how his clothes are stupid, he has a crazily thin belt.
Oh.
It's like a woman's belt. It feels like we would see like a belt my mom would have.
Yeah, he doesn't. He's angry at what he's wearing.
Yeah, he's wearing a suit, and his belt with the suit is like the thickness of my pinky or something.
But he like tears his coat off, and what's he say? He's like, "I look stupid in this." I can't remember what he says, but he says, "Do you think Hefner liked me?" So
she's like, "I was nervous the first time I was there." He really gets mad that she repeats that about him being nervous. Stop saying that.
So we go from this low self-esteem and all this desperation to him upgrading his style, and
he changes his whole style. One thing I noticed that when he gets new shades, he does not opt for I feel like Bob Fosse had these signature shades, and people wear them kind of in different movies of his movies and stuff, and he wore them in there's a movie called The Little Prince, a Stanley Donen movie from 1974, and Bob Fosse acts in it. And this is people love to put this clip next to clips of the Billie Jean video of Michael Jackson, because Michael Jackson aped a lot of the dance moves. He plays a snake, and he wears these shades in it that I feel like he was probably really associated with these frames. I thought it'd be funny if Eric Roberts got the Bob Fosse frames.
Are they kind of like aviators, or
they remind me of some kind of weird Oakleys. They're not like aviators. They're very they have kind of a 60s vibe, which maybe is he went more realistic with what Snyder. Maybe he had changed his own style by then, but they have a weird they remind me more of Oakleys or something, not circly. They have a top bar, and then they kind of cut down on the side. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures of him, but I'm not seeing these zany glasses that you mentioned.
They're not something I would wear.
So yeah, this montage is so funny. I like the music in it a lot too, and we see him kind of upgrading, but it's still just as tacky and sleazy. He gets some snakeskin boots.
Oh yes.
Then it goes from that to this funny intervention scene with Stratten, Hefner, and the Playboy team kind of advising her not to marry Snyder.
Yes, this is where
they're just suggesting that she shouldn't do it, but they can't. Yeah, really
and then
tell
she's
her
like, "Come right out and say what you think of him. Why you don't like him?" And Hefner says, "He has the personality of a pimp."
Yes.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said it. She's like, "No, that's just how he used to dress. He doesn't dress like that now."
She's laughing.
He replaced all his clothes.
And she also mentions that she owes this to him, which she says, I think maybe more than once. And this is kind of a thing that runs through it, is she feels like she owes something to him, which is why it's hard for her to break it off. Now, here's a question that I may have missed, Paul Snyder Jr. Do we ever see them get married? Did I miss that?
Man,
I feel like we just don't ever see it. It maybe was cut from the movie.
Maybe. We also see we see lots of pictures of them together get taken at some point.
We see wedding photos, yes.
Okay.
So maybe that's all you need for that, which is fine with me.
Yeah, there were a few different things, some of the like we were talking about how it does seem like there are just these different levels of smoothies and stuff like that, and stuff with this little sister that seems creepy, but also kind of all feels kind of barely there. I wondered how much of this movie might have been cut.
Yeah, weird.
It is a pretty lean, mean movie, which is another thing I like about the movie, is that it's not that long. It's barely over an hour and a half, right?
Yeah, it's a lean movie. It's not long, moves fast.
Yeah, it's not boring. That's why I think all the other movies by Bob Fosse, including his musicals, I think all kind of bore me.
All that jazz I have not seen Cabaret all the way through, but I know all that jazz was 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and man, it was tedious in parts.
I'd say all that jazz. I mean, not all that jazz, but I'd say Cabaret is probably my second favorite to this one. But even it's pretty boring to me. I'm not a big musicals man.
Yeah, me neither, which is why I didn't make it too far through At Long Last Love.
Sweet Charity is kind of just too sad and way too long. It's 2.5 hours long, but it does have some funny lines. There's some of the dialogue in Sweet Charity is pretty sophisticated, funny.
Do you remember the Hey Big Spender?
Yes, that's number? The first big, maybe the second big number. Yeah, when she goes to her work.
I've seen that clip and I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
I thought that was a
she
cool
works in
song.
this club, which is another, like, like she works in like kind of a proposition-y hookery job. She's the hat check girl at this club where you can be bought as a hooker. There's definitely implication that maybe she is kind of a hooker.
Yeah. Which I thought that Sweet Charity was Knights of Cabiria. Was it an adaptation?
Oh, you're
or was
right. It is kind of a Knights of Cabiria. I didn't even pick that up, which is another his
it was a
fascination with
loose
Bellini.
adaptation.
You're right. It is a Knights of Cabiria kind of deal, very much so. Yeah, she moves stories of her with these different men, and she's kind of a sad, heartbreaky.
McLean is the Juliet de Messina.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're right. It's been a long time since I've seen Knights of Cabiria, but that's definitely you're 100% correct.
I love just the intercutting between Stratton's ascent and, I mean, Snyder, his story's not a descent. It's just he's up to something else all the time.
Yeah,
so
nothing he does really works out. Like, we get the idea that like he tries to, which we're coming up on something crazy, but
yeah, the Chippendale show was what we're getting into.
Oh yeah, which is that's in the article. This really, yeah, he was doing like basically like, yes, like he does, he's the all male review, which is another, like, you can tell Bob Fosse put a lot of work into this scene, and these guys are like fantastic dancers and stuff.
Which is really just this scene is just a retread of the wet t-shirt thing, because
But with men in a women's
he gets
club.
screwed out of money. I loved how, though, at the beginning of this scene, the black male dancer is introduced as the first black president of the United States.
I missed that.
Yeah.
He has a crazy name that doesn't sound very black in the grand scheme of names.
Yeah, I don't remember what his name is.
Yeah, this is also after she's been interviewed. We see Dorothy Stratten like in this interview where we cut back and forth to this big interview at different times, like of her aping the family speech that Hugh Hefner gave her, and one of the interviewers has heard it so many times from Playmates, I guess, that he's predicting exactly what she's going to say from Hugh Hefner's speech. But there's one like recognizable dude that interviews her that says, like, he's like, "Can I ask you a personal question?" And she's like, 20, 34, 24, 26, 36 or something like that. And he's like, "No, it's written here several times in my press packet here." But that guy, he was super recognizable to me, and he's been in many, many things over the years.
Yes, his name is Robert Picardo.
I watched an episode of Tales from the Crypt to bring back all our Tales from the Crypt from last episode, where he plays hitman in an episode with John Stamos, and he's a hitman with another mobster that's a hitman played by Frank Stallone.
Nice. Yeah, Picardo was like he was in a bunch of Joe Dante movies. He was like in The Howling. And,
yeah, I've seen that.
I mean, looking at his stuff here, he was in almost every Joe Dante movie. He was in The Burbs and Gremlins 2.
Who does he play?
Inner Space. Remember the cowboy in Inner Space? The agent who's the cowboy?
It's been a long time since I've seen Inner Space, but I used to watch a lot as a kid. That's the one thing, is like this guy, when I looked at his IMDb too, and I was thinking that I've seen this guy in so many things, but I can't remember any of the characters he played.
It says he was the garbage man in The Burbs.
He
has a bit of a David Cross vibe to him, but I like him in this interview scene where he brings up the husband. Or what does he say? "Are you married?"
Oh, there you go.
He's asked some very leading question. He almost feels like a plant by Hef or something to I don't know.
You just get the feeling like these journalists are all very bored with this kind of interview.
Yeah, so he's just
and she's not very interesting
to try and embarrass
spice
her
it
about
up.
husband.
Yeah. This is also where she talks about how she's about to be in this movie Wednesday's Child. And I forget what that movie really was, like what its title is, but I couldn't find it very easily to watch, or I would have watched it. It looks crazy. Because then we go to her making that movie,
which is like a low budget, like a slasher or a thriller
or something, where she's like being held hostage. This is another scene of her being a real ditz, a real cow, because the director gets mad because she has like a pellet of blood that's supposed to like trickle out at some point in the scene or something. And while they're talking about the scene, she accidentally bites it.
Yes.
And he just gets super frustrated, like she's such an idiot.
And we have Snyder just incessantly calling the set during this scene here.
Ruining her concentration, ruining the set. Yeah. And why does he want to be, why is he calling her?
because he wants to buy this Mercedes.
Yeah, he needs more money to do it. And he's with the Mercedes, finally found the Mercedes, and he's going to get a license plate that says Star 80, STAR 80.
Yes.
He spells it out.
Yeah. Can you
He's
go
like,
on your
that's
lunch
you.
break? So yeah, and he does the car thing, and I think he calls again, or maybe in the same phone call, he asks her to help him get into the Playboy mansion.
Oh, that's right. Can you call down to the mansion? Yeah, she's like, he needs her to go to the bank. And she's going to be shooting all day and doesn't really have time to go to the bank. And he also wants her to call the Playboy mansion so he can go hang out.
Yeah, so he's got 2 requests in one phone call. So he goes to the Playboy mansion, and Hef sees him there. It's not.
Yeah,
happy
he's
to
hanging
see
out with
him.
Bobo. He's not. They're playing pinball in the famous game room of the Playboy mansion.
Have you been to that mansion?
No, but it apparently does have like a crazy room with a bunch of pinball machines and stuff. And there you see they have like pool cues. I don't know if we see anybody shooting pool, but it's not the famous Playboy pinball game though that you would see in arcades in the 80s.
Yeah, I remember that game.
Yeah, he's playing some other pinball game, but he's hanging with Bobo.
Yeah,
And talking about how he needed them to she got offered a part in a movie that came out posthumously that I did start watching right before that we started recording today, or before I took a little nap, is a movie called Galaxina. I don't know what they called in this movie, but it was terrible.
Oh, the sci-fi movie that she mentions?
Yeah. Before I watched the movie, though, I watched a Siskel and Ebert where they review Galaxina. And there's a segment at the end of the Siskel and Ebert episode where they each list their least favorite Oscar nominee of the year. And the one Siskel picks is hilarious. Like there's some disaster movie that got nominated for best costume design in 1981, and he shows like a clip of it, and people are just wearing like regular clothes and shit in it, like it has no thought put into it at all. And he's like, here's Jacqueline Bisset, she's wearing a cowboy hat and a low-cut blouse. Stuff. And he's like, and then he points out that the same guy got nominated like a year or 2 before for best costume design for like a movie that had no thought put into the costume design. He's like, it's some kind of favoritism scam thing going on here, and it totally looked like there was. It was really funny.
I had seen an interview with Eric Roberts, I think from last year, from the Adam Carolla show, where he was talking about Runaway Train and how he was nominated for an Oscar for that. And he was like, I wasn't nominated for an Oscar for a movie I thought I should have been nominated for, which was Star 80.
He says that's his favorite performance of his.
Oh, cool. And then he goes on to say that I think the reason I'm proud of my work in Runaway Train. He goes, but I think the reason I was nominated for that was just that Golem and Golan, from Canon Films. He's like, I think they bought me that nomination. He's like, I think they threw a bunch of money around because that movie was a hit, and it was their biggest hit.
Interesting. There's, I guess, like when Gary Oldman did not get nominated for the Oscar for Sid and Nancy for playing Sid Vicious, I think Siskel went on Joan Rivers' show or something, and he said they were talking about Oscar nominations, and he said that Ebert had a rule he calls the Star 80 rule, where the Oscars don't nominate guys for playing such huge creeps, because he thought Roberts got ripped off for this movie.
Yes, which would change, moving into like the Coen brothers 90s, like in Fargo and stuff. Losers and creeps.
Still, like, you got to think like more supporting roles, but if you look at it, I guess, I mean, Nick Nolte got nominated for Affliction, but he lost to Roberto Benigni, which he definitely should have won.
Yeah.
But I guess also Life is Beautiful is a bigger hit. People do vote on these things, and I think that people always want to make these things a scam, like some kind of conspiracy, but you really just find out that whatever movie touched the hearts of old people, you find out that like there's a sentimental audience out there. Like this, like last year with Chadwick Boseman being nominated posthumously, right before the Oscars came on TV, I watched most of that movie with Anthony Hopkins, the father, and just how maudlin it was and how sad Anthony Hopkins' character was. I was like, holy shit, he's going to win. Which reminds me of a piece of old business. The Oscar nominations actually came out today.
Yeah.
And if you'll remember, many months ago, long before this movie was even released, not Star 80, but the movie The Tragedy of Macbeth, I predicted that Denzel Washington would win Best Actor for The Tragedy of Macbeth. And today we are one step closer to that coming true because he was nominated today.
I didn't see the nominations.
He was nominated. However, I also saw the movie The Tragedy of Macbeth. And when I watched the movie, I thought he had not a chance of in hell afterwards of winning.
You didn't like him in it?
I thought he was fantastic, but just not showy enough.
Yeah.
I thought that the movie was good, but I thought that overall all the acting was good. Like the Joel Cohen, he really did a good job of getting. None of the actors, maybe you could argue, if anyone is too over the top, it's his wife. What's her face? Frances McDormand, but I thought she was good. But really, the movie is stolen by the woman that plays the witch sisters.
Cool.
They do a lot of visual stuff with that, and the visuals kind of overpower the movie. But Denzel Washington is great in it, but I just did not see it being an Oscar-y type of role the way they do it. Like he does it more. He's not grandstanding and yelling at things nonstop. But then looking at the nominees, I haven't seen. This is one of the years where I haven't seen like any of the movies that are nominated, really very few, and I'll probably change that between now and the Oscars. But looking at his competition, I don't know, like maybe I'll end up being right on this after all.
Yeah, I'll have to look at those nominations once we wrap here. But back to the world of Star 80.
Yes.
This scene here in the Playboy Mansion is important because this is where Paul Snider Sr. meets the plastic surgeon character.
Yes.
Now, do you remember this guy's name?
The character or the actor?
The character. I just call him the doctor, the plastic surgeon.
No, I didn't. In fact, I looked it up later, and his name is Jeb or Geb. It's Geb, and I did not remember it ever being said in the movie.
No, maybe because we see him in a little clip, an interview clip.
Yes, which is really very funny.
And he's one of the only guys who really befriends. He is the only guy who befriends Snider, right? Besides,
Yes.
Dorothy.
Yeah, and he's just moving to LA in the movie. He's a plastic surgeon who is just moving to LA and has this house, and he lets Snider and Stratten move into the top floor and rent from him.
Yeah, they split the upstairs and the downstairs.
And there's this interview thing where he's talking about how his things he has he's talking about the house, and he has a dog, a German Shepherd named King, and he has a Rolls Royce. Now he has this Rolls Royce for the practice. It's not a status symbol like so many people are into out here. He's not into status symbols. He wants you to know. And it's very funny, his own sort of insecurity and being a Robertsy type. He also brings up that Dorothy Stratten had already been on Buck Rogers. And that reminded me,
TV gigs.
Yeah, that she's in the best episode of Buck Rogers ever. Like that is worth watching. She's on one where they go to a space cruise ship, and she plays like Miss Cosmos, the most perfect woman in the galaxy or something, in the universe. But what makes it so great is that Buck Rogers, he hangs out with this robot named Tweaky in every episode. That's his like sidekick. And in this episode, Tweaky falls in love with a robot a lady robot on the cruise ship. And then he starts fucking up and like not being around. And they have to take him to task because he's having too much sex and disappearing too much with the girl robot. And the girl robot can only say one thing. She just says, booty, 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 booty.
Wow.
It's awesome.
So you've seen all this Dorothy Stratten stuff. You've seen her other movies. Would you say that she's a beautiful person? Beautiful woman?
I don't remember her that much in the other ones. I'm not sure I got to any of her scenes in Galaxina before I stopped watching. However, I do remember in At Long Last Love, when they show her from behind in those skating, she's fucking like got a great body.
She's a cutie. I've only seen that. I've only seen They All Laughed, and then I saw her.
That's what I meant. They All Laughed. Yeah.
And yeah, that's right. You didn't see her roller skating in that other movie, but
I did, but I don't remember.
Man, I think she there is something about her that is kind of pretty special.
Well, that's what's funny, and They All Laughed was the first thing I watched of these things with her since I watched Star 80 again.
Uh-huh.
You kind of feel like from watching Star 80 that maybe Bogdanovich saw something in her and gave her this, like, in addition to falling in love with her, like maybe brought something really out of her as an actor and all this stuff. Then when I turned on the movie At Long Last Love, or no, not At Long, those titles, They All Laughed. The first person you meet in the movie is a blonde cab driver who really does have this like charming star quality, who I didn't recognize. And I thought at first that was Dorothy Stratten, but I thought, man, she looks older. She really got hard fast. But no, that's a totally different lady who ended up marrying Keith Richards.
Yeah, and Stratten is more of a glamorous
and is barely around in the movie, and she looked great from behind. She made almost no impression on me in the movie.
she's just eye candy in the movie.
Yeah, she's just eye candy. Totally.
But man, you want to talk about male gaze and the male gaze and whatever you mentioned earlier. That gaze is super in effect, and They All Laughed. Like you just can tell Bogdanovich is in love with her. And of course, John Ritter's character, who is in love with her in the movie, looks just like Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah, it's very Bogdanovich movie. And it's a lot of him following her and watching her.
Yep.
Yeah, so to me, it didn't creep me out as much, except for the fact that I was just like, man, she really isn't making much of it. It's not much of a role.
Yeah, she's just eye candy, it feels like. So the stuff of them moving into this house, we see Snyder and Stratten, or I guess they're married at this point. We see them getting set up at this house, and then we see a barbecue scene.
And this is the doctor's real house.
In real life?
This was the house.
Oh, cool.
Weird, but cool.
Yeah. Snyder is barbecuing on a balcony, like a upstairs.
And they're having like some people over, and there's some like weird bohunky guy, almost seems mouthy, in a classic soft tracksuit, and he's pulling out these like benches for exercise from the garage that I guess Paul Snyder's been trying to get going, selling exercise equipment, like weight benches.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not going well at all. He tells the guy like to put that one in the garage with the other no sales. And there's one bench that's covered.
Yeah, it's covered by a blanket,
and the guy uncovers it, like a tarp or something, and he's like, "What's this?" And he brings it out. And how would you describe this?
Well, I think does it have a name? Is it a sex bench or a BDSM bench?
That's what it looks like to me, some kind of a BDSM bench. It reminded me of it. It's not as wacky or as intricate or crazy as the bench in Burn After Reading.
Oh, yeah.
That George Clooney's been making.
Yeah, it almost looks more like an examination, bench.
Yeah, and it has restraints.
You go to the lady doctor.
Then there are it's definitely a thing looks like it's meant to be bent over. And you described it as being for anal sex, I believe.
I called it a rape bench.
I think you said something, you definitely said something about
bench.
Anal. Yeah, ass rape bench or something. But I did not pick up on that it was for anal. I just thought it was for doggy style and could be used for anal.
Yeah.
But that's something not brought up in the movie. I think you were right. I think it is maybe meant for anal in some way.
No, I think it could be meant for various things, and the people at the party are just all laughing because they know what it is, but naive Stratten.
Dorothy does not know.
No.
And she asks, and you can just see the hurt and embarrassment on Paul Snyder's face.
Yeah.
It's so good. This is such a good scene where
she's like, what? I don't know what it is. Didn't it remind you of The Simpsons where Homer as a little kid is at the zoo and he's like, the zookeeper, those monkeys are killing each other.
Oh.
And the zookeeper's like, they're having sex. Because someone whispers in Stratton's ear.
Yes, what it's for. Yeah. And she looks up at Roberts and she's embarrassed too. And Roberts he's like, I only made it as a joke.
Yeah. And after this, we see the roller skating thing where
they had this roller skating party. This really happened, I guess. They were filming a Playboy roller skating party.
And this is where we meet the character Aram Nicholas.
Yes. And another, not just Keenan Ivory Wayans' acting debut, also the great Roger Rees.
As Aram Nicholas?
Yes, this is his first movie as well.
Yeah, he's a very recognizable feller.
He has an amazing trifecta where he was the villain in Stop Her, My Mom Will Shoot, If Looks Could Kill, and Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh, that's right. He was the sheriff of Nottingham.
Yeah, Sheriff of Rottingham, please.
There we go. So yeah, he's basically playing Peter Bogdanovich.
Yeah, and he's a wonderful actor.
And Hef recommends Stratten to him and says that, you know, she's an up and comer and you should think about casting her in something. And he says, I'm only interested in real actors. And I can't remember what Hef
But you can
says.
tell he's immediately taken with her out of everyone he sees there.
Yeah, and Hemingway is really getting into the roller skating in this scene. So she goes to meet him at his place, this Aram Nicholas.
It's a stand-in for Bogdanovich, and they had a different guy as a stand-in for Bogdanovich in the TV movie, also with a different fake name.
Yeah.
So you see like that they must have really been in a position where they couldn't do anything they couldn't really prove happened to Peter involving Bogdanovich without getting sued. Because they use Hugh Hefner, they use Playboy. The other movie uses the other real movie she was in. This movie, the TV movie, this movie makes all the movies fictional, but it uses the real names of the TV shows.
And I had heard that Bogdanovich, I don't think he ever saw Star 80. Or actually, no, I think he eventually did and wrote something very negative about it.
I think he wrote like a book or wrote something about Dorothy Stratten eventually.
Yeah, so I think he did see Star 80, but didn't like
But he
it.
had told Fosse not to make the movie ahead of time, saying he didn't know the whole story. And the thing is that Fosse said, I'm not making a Dorothy Stratten movie, I'm making a Paul Snider movie.
Yeah.
He's like, well, if I don't like my portrayal, I'm going to sue you.
Yeah.
But he never did sue.
They don't really make Bogdanovich look bad, I don't think. I mean, I guess he steals a sleazy pimp's wife.
Well, to be honest, they go soft on this and on Hugh Hefner. But if you really look at what happens at this point, he starts love bombing her and becomes sleazy daddy pimp number 3, right? Where it's like now all of a sudden it is like a pyramid where everybody's an outsider trying to get to where Peter Bogdanovich is the inside layer, because Hugh Hefner really wants to get Stratten in on that movie. He kind of pimps her out to Roger Rees.
Yeah.
And what happened with this article brings up, the famous Dorothy Stratten article this is based on, is that in the same way that Paul Snider had previously tried to get a girl into Playboy and failed, Hugh Hefner over the years had tried to get many chicks into being big stars in Hollywood, and it had never worked. And that was like his dream, that Hugh Hefner was kind of looked down on by real Hollywood people. They would go to his parties, they would have sex with his ladies, but he was, déclassé interloper. He wasn't on their level, and he wasn't an insider in the Hollywood community.
Yeah, and I always thought that like people involved in pornography weren't really allowed.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how he was.
Of TV and movies.
That's right. He had all this stuff to get him close to it, interviews, everything, but he was never really in it. Yes. And this would Dorothy Stratten would have been, in his eyes, was like his big chance, in the same way she was Paul Snider's big chance.
So 2 of the Aram Nicholas movies mentioned in this movie are Timestamp and The Last Chase. Did these titles remind you of some of the movies that Eric Roberts was in 1999?
Absolutely. It seemed like they went out of their way not to make the titles like too close to the real titles. Of course, there was The Last Picture Show, but that doesn't seem like it's anything like The Last Chase.
No.
Except for when we see a photo of it in Roger Rees's office, in Aram Nicholas's home office. It's a black and white movie, but also the Paper Moon was a black and white movie. And there was a movie called The Paper Chase that Bogdanovich did not make. Yeah. So I don't know what the thought was behind these titles, but it almost seemed like the titles were trying not to too directly refer to Peter Bogdanovich movies. They were really generic. Like, what would you say? Does Timestamp seem like it refers to any of them? There was Nickelodeon.
It has the feeling of maybe a thriller, like
Targets.
Yeah,
when the guy's like, surely you saw these movies, to Dorothy Stratten, her agent, where he's trying to tell her about who Peter Bogdanovich is. It doesn't seem like if you were trying to explain it to someone who wasn't that into movies, that you would go with a movie made when she was a little kid that wasn't that big, like Targets. Like, it seems like you would probably go with Paper Moon and Last Picture Show, or whatever his most recent movie was. Probably At Long Last Love or something. I don't know.
Yeah. In any case,
Daisy Miller
she lies about seeing. She mentions the last chase. She was like,
but she looks at that. There's a picture in his office, and she says, "Oh, this is from Time." She's like, "Oh, timestamp."
Mm-hmm.
He's like, "That's from The Last Chase, actually."
He's like,
"You didn't see it, did you?"
So there's more of this longing look, which is like the Snyder gaze.
There are a couple of scenes in this where he doesn't do a good job of covering his English accent, Roger Rees. Like, for the most part he does, but there's one part where he says the word lawyer, and he sounds like super like a guy trying not to sound British.
I didn't know.
He's like, lawyer or something. Law, I can't do it. But at any rate, this was another thing in the TV movie. When she goes to his home office looks exactly the fucking same in the TV movie. And I wondered if there was some picture of Bogdanovich in his home office or interview with him in it that they both copied.
Oh, that's strange. Maybe so.
But out of all the things, like, where that the guy doesn't look like Peter Bogdanovich in the TV movie, but that office, the window out that leads out, looks like it looks out on his driveway or whatever outside. It all looks exactly the same. It's almost the same angles.
So Aram Nicholas hires Stratten to be in his movie that's going to be shooting in New York. So she has to explain to Snyder that he can't come with her. And he's so excited at first to go to New York. And so he's just so like crestfallen when she's
he's like, I could really help out. Busy. Yeah, he really thinks he's going to be a part of this movie.
This is where he flies into a jealous rage and he starts accusing her of screwing Aram Nicholas. And he
before that though, did you recognize the guy that plays the doctor for their roommate from anything?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
He's
David
very
Clennon as Jeb.
My favorite role he has is one where he's almost unrecognizable to me. I had to look at his IMDb I was just looking at things I knew him from, and I didn't remember him playing this part, but I love him in the movie Light Sleeper, where it's like he plays the assistant coke dealer to Susan Sarandon in their little operation with Willem Dafoe.
Okay, yeah.
Their little coke dealing family, where she's the queen and he's like her right hand man, and Willem Dafoe's like their dealer to the public.
Okay, yeah, I remember that now.
He's playing very in Light Sleeper. He's playing very gay, and he has a mustache, and he's very thin. But it's like I didn't even recognize him as that part. But I really love Light Sleeper. I remembered him from the movie The Thing.
We'll come back to Clennon because there's a funny thing with him coming up in the story. In this scene here about the New York thing, Snyder gets really pissed and he's accusing her of screwing Aram. Then he calms down and tells her to go to New York and be a big star. He's going to stay back. And he says, I'm going to stay back and work on the Dorothy Stratten poster.
Yes.
Which is one of his big dreams in the movie, is to make this poster like the Farrah Fawcett poster.
Yeah,
that's going to be like the biggest selling lady poster ever. That's going to be in all teenage boys' bedrooms. So then we see the doctor again in one of those interview clips where he talks about while she was in New York, something like Snyder was really helpful around the house.
This is one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Me too. Go ahead.
He says, and he's like, oh, and he did something really crazy. He made a doghouse for King. And we start seeing like Snyder working really hard on sawing wood, and he's got a pencil behind his ear and stuff. And Jeb is like, it was beautiful. I didn't even know he knew I had a dog.
Which makes me think, like, I guess he built all those weightlifting benches.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. So I guess like just to distract himself, he needed some kind of activity and he had no job. So he just threw himself into making this ultimate doghouse, which also just feels like, is he the dog that needs this message? It's about him feeling like the dog needing a good home.
Maybe. I didn't read it that way, but that's a funny read. So we see some more neighbor stuff with the Clennon guy, or Clennon, I mean, where Snyder is like overcome.
They're sinning.
He's overcome with jealousy. And the Clennon guy, remember, he's like shaving in a bathroom.
Yes. Oh, yes.
And this is where the Snyder paranoia really starts to kick in,
Yeah.
where he's just convinced that she's cheating on him with this director in New York. And this is the thing that I mentioned where he's like, she calls it film.
Yes.
She never said film before. She always said movies or pictures. And he sits down all pissed and he goes, I bet he calls it film.
And Clinton
so,
gives him, he's like, get a job, make her proud of you.
Yeah. Get yourself together and do something that she'll be proud of you for. So he tries to open a health club.
And he has the greatest idea for it. He's like, I've got a great idea for the name.
I forget the name.
Dorothy Stratten's Health Club.
Yeah, that's so funny. Yes. So he goes and checks out this place. He's on the phone with her. And so this is where he's on the phone with her and she's been shooting this movie and she says something that instantly makes him flash back to the night that she was talking to her mother on the phone and lying. I said that it was convincing, but I take that back. It was very poor lying to her mother.
Another way she was talking to her mom on the phone, he's like not helping by taking Polaroids of her while she's trying to lie to her mom.
Yeah,
with
what's that
noticeable
sound?
noise? Yeah.
What a dick. So yeah, he's reminded of the way that she lied to her mother on prom night. And so this just sets him off even deeper.
Yeah, which is more of our, Fosse interpreting Dorothy as not a person with much personality or bright, kind of a cipher, basically a cow, a beautiful cow.
Yes,
And we've seen her parrot what the ideas Paul Snyder gave her, then the ideas Hugh Hefner gave her, and now the ideas that Aaron Nicholas is giving her.
And so
Daddy Pimp 3.
Snyder goes to a detective to figure out what's going on. Now, did you recognize this fellow?
Oh yes, the great Josh Mostel, who's Zero Mostel's son, who, of course, the first time I ever remember seeing him was in the great film, even better than this movie, Billy Madison.
That's right. It's the disgusting blob.
And what's funny, he
principal.
was in this movie, and it came after, I guess, Blowout, where Dennis Franz is the disgusting private eye. But these are very in contrast to the movie image of a private eye. I was thinking,
yeah, he's not
you're
as,
kind of Sam
not
Spade,
as slovenly and comic booky as what's his name from Blowout. But
no, in fact, he's kind of scrupulous, but he's certainly not glamorous and cool and suave either.
No, he's got a messy desk.
That's true. And he's not, Josh Mostel's a beautiful man, but he's not svelte.
Yeah. So Snyder wants to sue Nicholas, the director, for stealing his girl behind his back.
His business.
Do what?
His meal ticket as well.
Yeah, stealing his business. That's right. Oh yeah, there's this whole sequence of Snyder talking to this waitress.
Yes, because she said this is where we have a scene with Mariel Hemingway and Roger Rees where Dorothy Stratton's like, I don't know why I feel loyalty to him. So she's tempted already to leave him for Aaron Nicholas, where something is going on between them, but they haven't gotten together yet. Maybe she's like, I don't know why I feel this. I know he has other women. He always has had other women. And this is where we see like him try to pick up a waitress, and she's interviewed, and she's quite attractive. I don't remember who plays this lady, but she's pretty hot.
Yeah.
And she says that he came in at like 3 a.m. to the restaurant, which is when there are always a bunch of creeps. But then he starts promising that he can get her into Playboy.
Yeah, he gives her a card. She goes back to his place, and
they roll around in the Mercedes.
I can't remember if he takes pictures of her like he did with
Well, no, we cut to him. He's calling the Playboy Mansion and not able to get a hold of Hef, where Hefner's sitting right next to the guy on the phone who we've met earlier.
Yeah.
And Paul Snyder's drinking scotch and trying to get him to talk to Hef to try to impress this chick that he can get her looked at by Hefner. And there's a great thing where the guy is like, he's like, I'm Paul Snyder. You probably remember me. We've met before. I was probably with Dorothy Stratton.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, I know you, Paul, but Hefner's not here. And then he hangs up and he's like, he was there the whole time. And while he's on the phone, this waitress lady, she's in her bra and panties, so they've already hooked up, and she's like really put off and thinks he's such a loser. Like she's like, oh, I knew it, you were just bullshitting the whole time, you don't know him and stuff. which is hilarious because you think it's over between them. But then later you find out they're still going out. So she wasn't too put off to keep going out with Paul Snider after that.
I don't remember seeing her again.
You do see her. Yeah, they're together again later, which was
I
really
don't
cracking me
remember
up.
that,
I was
but-
like, she still dated him.
Well, him saying he was there the whole time is interesting because Snyder's paranoia is like he's correct about a lot of this
Yes,
stuff.
that's one thing about the movie is like he's paranoid, but he's also right. They are stealing his lady and cutting him out and treating him like shit. He's not wrong.
Yeah, so it's like he does have the satisfaction. Well, he doesn't know that Hef is there, but he does get the satisfaction when he finds out that Stratten really was cheating on him.
That's not a satisfaction though. It's like one of those things where when he finds out what happens, and are we quite there? I don't know.
Yeah, in the next scene,
It's where Josh Mostel breaks down for him like how she's been not really staying in her hotel in New York. She's really staying with Aaron Nicholas in his room.
yeah, and we get some scenes of Nicholas kind of advising, like you say, pimping Dorothy.
Yeah, he's
leading her
becoming
around,
like he's her director,
telling
and
her to
he's
get
also
a lawyer, telling her that she's outgrown Snyder.
And what's funny about all this about like possessing, like the book or the article points out that like Snyder's problem was he just was too small time. And you see that like the way that she would kind of blow up and like Hefner and Snyder, they all have these ideas for her body and stuff. But then when she starts doing the movie, Peter Bogdanovich was telling her, don't chew gum, it has too much sugar. So now he's directing her body.
Yeah.
It's like one person after another that's the same.
Good points there, PSJ. I'm liking your evaluation.
Yeah, and so Josh Mostel breaks all this, and Josh Mostel's wonderful in the movie as the private detective.
Yeah, he's good.
And they got these cool shots of the profile of him, like where he's like trying to tell him like ways they can try to get her. And he's like, well, maybe alien. Paul Snyder's like, when he finds out, you have this shot of him like Paul Snyder looking like at the camera and just kind of being quiet as he takes in the information that he's been right. She is sleeping with Aaron Nicholas. And then he says he needs to go to the bathroom, and he goes and looks at himself in the mirror while Josh Mostel's trying to figure out ways they can sue. And he's like, maybe something about alienation of affection. And Paul Snyder just pukes into the sink.
Yes.
And then Josh Mostel's like, nah, I don't think so. He's like maybe there's something there. Nah, probably not.
Well, they also talk about wearing a wire at some point that doesn't go anywhere. Like he changes his mind.
Is this when she's going to meet him at the restaurant, or is this for the final big end scene?
That's kind of all mixed up in this stuff, because mixed up in this stuff is Snyder buying the used pump action shotgun.
Which is a great scene where the guy that sells him the shotguns like, it was only fired on weekends by a little old psychotic school teacher.
Yeah, and there's this
like people always say about used cars.
There's this really,
it's only driven on weekends.
Really intense tubular bells from The Exorcist sounding music going on during all this stuff here as it's building.
Yes, it's when Roger Rees says you should probably talk to a lawyer is what he sounds really British. And we also find out Snyder was a lefty when he's shooting the gun.
Gun buyer say it?
Yeah, the gun buyer points out he's a lefty.
And then we see Snyder covering the walls with the pictures of Stratten, and then we see him having a breakdown in front of the plastic surgeon and his wife, and he says that he's heartbroken.
The doctor talks about how he's been bringing in all these pictures and showing them, putting the pictures everywhere. But before that, maybe this is right after we had the part where it's like just a shot of Roberts from behind as he's talking on the phone with her, and he's sitting in a director's chair, and he talks about how Aaron Nicholas is pulling her strings with what she's saying, and there are like marionette dolls sitting on the shelf.
Whoa,
it's kind of a weird moment.
That's cool, man. I almost feel like I should have watched this movie a third time, but it bears
scrutiny. It was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it a few times.
Then he goes and then they have the dinner. You're right. This is where they have the dinner. And he asks her if she kept that topaz ring, and she says yes. Before she went and did the movie, where he starts thinking she and Nicholas are getting together, they've been having rehearsals at Nicholas's house in LA before she goes to New York. And that's when she asks him if they can just throw everything away and go move back to Vancouver and forget about all this. And he has this out here and he just can't take it. Mm-hmm. But you also feel like when he's like, why do you want it? She's like, she has this bad feeling. And the bad feeling she has, we are partly supposed to anticipate, like, oh man, does she know it's going to end in violence? But it feels to me like she knows if she goes, she's going to leave him for Aaron Nicholas. And she does love him, but she also feels, you know, she doesn't feel the same way about him as she did. She's seen bigger daddies.
But
He's
she
no
still
longer
feels
her
like she
model of a
owes him
man.
too. I think that's one of her things with him.
Yeah, but she's conflicted, you know. He's no longer her image of a man.
Yeah.
But
well, in the scene where Snyder
she is loyal,
breaking down in front of the surgeon and wife neighbor.
Yeah, I was trying to show them all the pictures.
When they're walking, they're like, we got to go. We'll come back. Paul, just try and calm down. And they walk outside, and the plastic surgeon tells his wife, he goes, I can take a bragging Snyder. I can take a scheming Snyder. I just can't stomach a sentimental Snyder.
Like, I kind of like him. This is the first time I've liked him.
So yeah, also in this restaurant scene that you mentioned, Snyder admits that he doesn't have any money. He's broke.
He has a funny shirt in this scene that has no collar. What do you call that? A Nehru collar or something? Button-down shirt with no collar, but the no collar part is really thick.
Yes, I did notice the shirt. I don't know what kind of shirt it is, but
funny shirt. But it reminded me, I ordered a white button-down shirt on eBay. I've never owned a shirt with no collar like that before in my life, but I ordered a white shirt with a collar, and it came to me in the mail and it had no collar. And I wrote them I wanted a refund, and I was like, I should get something more than a refund. This is just like, you sent me the total wrong shirt, and I have to now go send like to you or something, or waste my time or something. Can you give me some kind of discount on another shirt? I was like, do you have the shirt I wanted to buy? And they were like, hey, do you want to just keep that shirt and we'll give you some money back? But not all the money. And I went and tried it on and stuff without the collar, and it looked really good on me. So I kept the shirt and just took a discount. But I swear I've not worn that shirt once since.
That happened to my girlfriend, where she had bought something, and instead of returning it, they were like, we'll just give you some money for it. So she got to keep it and get paid.
Yeah, but it's become a thing where I still can't bring myself to wear one of those button-down shirts with no collar in public.
You're going to have to overcome the fear.
I will have to.
When you play Paul Snyder, when you dress up as Snyder for Halloween.
Yes. It's not as near as crazy as Paul Snyder's shirt here. His is notable. This is just a really regular white shirt, but with the no collar.
So let's get to the last sequence here. Really, there's nothing left to get into besides there's the surgeon mentions that Snyder cleans up the house and gets everything nice and neat and ready for Dorothy to come by and talk to him.
That's right.
And she comes to the house and no one else is around. The detective mentions that he's going to call at some point to check.
Oh, wait. Well, we had the part where they ate, and he said that Eileen's in town, isn't she? Because when he's showing the pictures, he was talking about Eileen, the little sister, to the doctor and stuff, and how great she is, and how his dream, when Dorothy comes back to stay and stuff, that he's going to bring Eileen out. And then when Dorothy comes to visit or comes to talk to him, I guess the movie's wrapped or something. And the movie's wrapped, and she's back in LA, and she's been staying at Aaron Nicholas's house. And we find out that Eileen is also living at Aaron, or is at least vacationing at Aaron Nicholas's house.
Yeah.
Then when she talks to Aaron Nicholas after this, that's how he detects that there must be a private detective. Aaron Nicholas catches on that there's a detective that's been following them, because how else would Snyder know about Eileen being in town?
Yeah, I kind of slept through this part. I guess it wasn't very interesting to me.
It is interesting because this is how Bogdanovich comes into contact with the little sister being at his house, young Stratten.
Eventually married.
Yes, we haven't brought that up.
Later.
That's what we're getting to, is that after this murder of Dorothy Stratten, her little sister and mom, I think, are taken care of by Peter Bogdanovich. And maybe both continue to live at his house, or maybe just the little sister lives at his house. And like a couple of years later, he and the little sister get married, which is super crazy to me. But then they stay married for like 14 years.
Yeah,
and then even after
like 2001.
Yeah, and then even after their divorce, they become they still are like business partners. They still get along. Well, I guess he's dead now, but they remain friends and business partner.
As of this recording, Bogdanovich has been dead for about a month. R.I.P. Bogdanovich.
Big pimpin'.
R.I.P. Aram Nicholas.
Yeah. Roger Rees has been dead for many years now.
All right, so have we left? It seems like we have covered every fucking scene in this movie. And so now we're at the last scene, unless we've left anything out. Can you think of anything we've left out?
I think they walked King.
Let's just end the episode here. We all know how it ends.
Oh no, we've got to get to the way this ending goes down.
Something is screwy, Dorothy. Something else is going on here. I can feel it.
Aram says I'm gonna need every bit of concentration.
You did, huh? Aram says this and Aram says that. Will you stop with the fucking arrow?
Aram is a very nice man.
Oh, shit. They're all nice to you. Everybody is wonderful. Mr. Hefner is wonderful. The whole fucking world is wonderful to you. Well, fuck Aram. Or maybe you have already.
Oh, Paul.
I mean, maybe that's what this is all about, huh? Maybe that's what's been going on at those rehearsals up at his house. Did you fuck him? Is that how you got the part? That's how it's done down here, isn't it?
The idea for the project began when Bob Fosse's friend Patty Chayefsky recommended a Pulitzer Prize-winning article about Stratten, written by Teresa Carpenter.
If I spring a leak, she mends me. I don't have to speak. She defends me. A drunkard's dream, if I ever did see one. I lied. I said I was going to pee, but I really wanted to get a fucking beer.
Nice.
Drink
Well,
a Michelada.
You're going to have to drink to get through this last scene.
Yes.
Stratton goes to the house to speak to Paul Snider.
Oh, yeah.
There's a giant picture of Stratton on the wall. That's humongous.
Yes. And once again, we're really shooting in the house where this happened.
Yeah, that's so twisted.
Yeah. But I'm imagining that the picture that is probably overstated for effect that they talk in front of.
Yeah, it's a Fosse indulgence.
And Mariel Hemingway had already been in Manhattan by Woody Allen at this point.
Mm-hmm. Which is really what this and Manhattan are really the two movies I know are best from Superman 4.
Yes. Yeah, I don't remember seeing her in anything since about the year 2000. I'm sure she's been in a lot. When we were growing up in the 90s, she was on that show Central Park West, but I never watched it. But I do remember pretty recently I rewatched the movie The Contender with Joan Allen and Gary Oldman, and she's in that for a minute.
Never saw it.
And Jeff Bridges.
When Stratton goes to speak to Snyder here, I think one of the first things that she says is she offers him $7,000.
Yes. And before when they were at the restaurant, she said she would take care of him. And he's adapted that in his mind. He's twisted it to her saying she would always take care of him.
Yeah.
And she tells them that $7,000 is half of everything she has, which is probably true because he's been spending all her money. She shut down their joint bank account at Aram Nicholas's advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's desperately trying to get her back. He's being very pathetic. At one point, he confesses that he bought a gun and that he doesn't want to live. And then he kind of perks. This whole scene is like, I know we don't like to diagnose people psychologically, but this is a very bipolar scene. It's just up and down and manic and depressive. It's so funny, like how rangy this scene is.
I don't think it's that. I think we're seeing very much a portrait of this kind of insecure guy when he's finally going to lose, and he'll just say anything to win until it gets pushed into this. We've seen that he has this violent side. I think that all this stuff he says could be said by a lot of guys or girls that get dumped that aren't violent.
It's just desperate. Yeah, maybe
this is a desperate person that
desperation.
really doesn't want to lose.
But he tries everything,
and he is,
right?
Yeah.
Like at one point he's like, don't leave.
All his hopes and dreams are tied up in this woman.
One of the funniest things that he does in this scene is he goes and gets the poster art. He wants to. He's still
show her the
obsessed
poster.
with this poster.
Yes.
She shuts him down on that, and
he's like, "Oh, it's too small time for you."
Yeah, you're too good for it now. So then she tells him she wants a clean break. So he goes into a rage, and then he'll apologize. Finally, he goes and he grabs the gun.
He goes off in a room by
Stays in the other
himself.
room, and he's calling her a liar. He's
And
screaming,
she's about to
"Liar."
leave. At some point when they're arguing here, her keys fly onto the floor. And you see, well, he's in the room with the gun. She picks up her keys and goes to the door, and she's almost out. But she hears the gun not go off, but get cocked or loaded. And that she's
like
still
a really smart girl. She goes back into the room.
Yeah, I mean, this shows like, yeah, she's almost gets the clean break, but she doesn't want him to kill himself. She's afraid he'll really kill himself. So she goes back to talk him out of it.
She goes back into that room. What happens before he pins her down to show her what a real man is?
And first he says, like, you don't think I'll do it. You think I'm a coward.
Yeah.
Because he's threatening to kill himself.
Doesn't
but
she
then
take the
something
gun out of
happens,
his
yeah, where
hand?
she takes the gun, he lets her or something, and then after that he decides to rape her.
Yes.
And
he stops in the middle of that. She screams and he stops.
And all of that is kind of like extreme normal, kind of like almost normal behavior if he hadn't been, I don't know, like even, yeah, because it's like even the like, I'm going to show you, and you're going to like it because you liked it so many times before. And then she's like, he does stop, but he realizes how much she doesn't want it. But then she does a very odd thing, which she decides, which I also think is like, you can follow her logic based on the movie and stuff. And who knows if this really happened. We're getting into the unknowable here because these people don't survive this scene, and were no witnesses. So we don't know if he stripped her nude or if she did this on her own, like is shown in the movie. But in the movie, she decides to let him bone her, and she lays back and takes off all her clothes and strips naked one last time for him.
Yes.
And you kind of understand based on her psychology in the movie that she's this person. In her mind, all she has to offer really people is her body. And if she can give him her body one last time, maybe she can get that clean. She can make him feel like good for a minute and leave, and they can get that clean break. Yeah. But she's very not into this. She's not horny for Roberts, horny for the snide. But he decides he's going to show her what a man he is and what she's missing out on with that director. And he starts trying to have sex with her, and she's super not into it. And did you get the feeling that he was having a hard time staying aroused or what? Or maybe that she was just so dry, he couldn't get it in? What was going on here?
Yeah, he's kind of awkwardly pumping, and then he throws her to the floor.
And then you think it's going to be over or something, but then he starts pumping her on the floor after a minute.
Yeah, and then
it seems like that works better for him or something.
Yeah, then he's well, it's working better for a little bit. Then he starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't the phone ring? The detective.
The phone is ringing. We get a cut to Josh Mostel, who's saying that he thinks something's wrong with their phone because he can't get through.
Yeah, that's right.
But it's like clearly nothing's wrong with their phone. That was a weird thing. Really has even tried calling, because when he he calls him, he's like, I think something's wrong. It's like all it does is make their phone ring. And so then this really happened. That this guy's name in the movie's name was Private Detective. In real life, it was a detective named Goldstein. And Goldstein tried to call them during all this and get a hold of them. And just the phone did keep ringing, and maybe kept ringing after their deaths because Jeb got home and heard the phone ringing.
Yeah, we don't see this in the movie. So
no.
I wondered who discovered them.
Yeah, it was Jeb. Jeb and his girlfriend. Like apparently they were home for like Jeb came home, then maybe his girlfriend came home later or something. And eventually he was like, maybe you should go up and knock on their door. That phone's been ringing the whole time. And like maybe Paul Snyder's car was there or something. The Mercedes was there or something.
That's how they.
But yeah, at any rate, so Paul Snyder's crying. He finally pulls off of her, and he goes and gets that gun.
And he says,
they
did this.
Yeah, before that, he's something else before that. But yeah, but pretty much the last thing she hears in life is they did this. Is he's got the barrel of the gun to her cheek, and she's face down on the ground. Mm. And this was really, they got the exact thing. The brown rug that Paul Snyder had is the same rug here we see. And he blows her brains out. He blows her face apart.
Yeah.
Then after this, in the movie, and I was yelling, get the bench, not get the bitch. But he does get the bench and the bitch. He goes and gets the bench out of the closet, the ass rape bench, and straps her onto it. and I guess sodomizes her. And in real life, he did sodomize her. No one's sure if it happened before or after she was dead. At least the article said that. I don't know if they've gone back and proved that. But the movie hypothesizes that he did it after he blew her face off.
Oh my God.
Then after
Yeah.
that, he says, he sits down with the gun and puts the gun Ernest Hemingway style and says, "You're going to remember Paul Schneider."
Kablam. He also, after he shoots her, he also at one point just says, "My queen."
Yeah.
So yeah, we see this nice overhead shot of them. And this
Yeah, I think before he says
blood-splattered-
this, they did this. He says like, "Can you hear me?" or something like that.
Yes. He
Yeah,
says
then
that.
he's like, "They did this."
Oh, yeah, it's pretty brutal.
Which, of course, we don't know what he really did or said.
No. And so we see that overhead shot of them, and then we see this little clip of an interview with Stratten.
And this is another thing that was kind of questionable in the way that the movie was done. And I thought about, but then I noticed in the article, there's a kind of a thing where when she's dead and stuff, and they're both dead, it is very lingering on her naked, beautiful body, almost to compare her dead and not contrast her dead really, but to compare to her centerfold pictures. Like it's a very beautiful, sexy corpse.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
well, you get all those flashes of the photographs.
oh yeah, and then they also montage all their photographs.
Yeah,
There's
over
a
all
lot
that
of them.
stuff to add to the unsettling.
Yes,
quality
and
of
but
the
when I
movie.
noticed in the article, which is written by the article was written by a woman, that it brings up the comparison of her naked being in death with her pictures. So this is kind of we can fault Fosse for being gross here, but really I'm not sure that it is that gross of an idea, the way that she was a pinup person and the fashion of her death and the nudity. But the article does kind of draw the comparison as well, saying she was de rigueur one last time, like her pictures, or
Yeah,
in full rigor or something. Rigor.
the movie ends with just a clip of her saying how exciting it is to be noticed and for people to come and ask for autographs, and then that's it. That's star 80.
Well, oh, we also get when she's dead though, we get like a montage where it cuts to what everybody else is doing.
Yes, that's
Like
right.
it's like Hefner's looking at another model and they're talking about things they need to do to fix the model, to get rid of the braces, get like something else done to her, and they'll use her pictures.
Nicholas
and
is hanging out with the sister.
Nicholas, the sister's outside. Nicholas is editing the movie, editing a shot of Dorothy Stratten with his editor, who's played by Marilyn Mataram, who was the assistant editor of the real movie. And I guess really in real life, the doctor guy, he would do interviews, I guess, or like talk about all this that happened. And I guess the day that the killing happened, beforehand, he had been hanging with Snyder, and Snyder was like, he says he was all over the place. He's like, he didn't really take it as like Snyder was going to kill somebody or something, but he's actually like, Snyder did say something about how a playmate died mid-production on a movie and it caused a lot of chaos on the movie. And so it does kind of seem like maybe Snyder was planning to kill her and to kind of harm the Peter Bogdanovich's movie, like fuck it up by doing it.
Yeah, interesting. Premeditated.
Yeah, I think he did kind of plan to kill her.
You have any last notes on this? I have one thing I want to bring up.
I was thinking that, do you think that that Jews are like feather beds and that they're holding all your money? I was trying to think about this.
I think to find the real answer, you have to not use Google. I think you have to use one of those crypto fascist search engines to
Nazi
get the real,
crawler,
because they're not going to give it to you on Google. But that's a pretty good guess. Hey, Eric Roberts won the Boston Society of Film Critics Award for Best Actor for Star 80.
Yeah, I thought maybe we should look at who was nominated or who actually was nominated that year.
He was nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Actor.
Let me look at Academy Awards for 1983. Should be the Academy Awards 1984. Let's see who actually got nominated. Oh yeah, it was Jack Nicholson, right? Or maybe he got Best Supporting Actor. The Best Actor was Robert Duvall for Tender Mercies, which I never saw.
Oh yeah, I've seen that movie.
How is Tender Mercies?
It's chill. It's a relaxed movie.
This was the year Terms of Endearment won a lot of awards. Shirley MacLaine won Best Actress, not for Sweet Charity, but for Terms of Endearment. Michael Caine was nominated for Educating Rita, which I've also never seen. Tom Conti was nominated for Reuben, which I've never even heard of.
Sounds delicious.
It does. And Tom Courtenay and Albert Finney were both nominated for The Dresser, which is the only movie in that category I've seen. I preferred Star 80 as a movie. Can't remember what acting performances I preferred, but I did like the movie Star 80 more than The Dresser.
How about the next Roberts? Have you thought about your selection?
Oh, yeah. It's going to be Hitman's Run.
It's going to be Star 80 again?
Yes. No, it's going to be Hitman's Run.
Hitman's Run from 1999.
Yes. We're going to go to that 1999 list of movies and take one.
This
is a movie I've been hoping we'd do
access?
Since it's on YouTube. We're going back to the world of YouTube.
Nice. Yes. We're going to change the title of this podcast to the Esoteric YouTube Roberts.
Yeah, we can definitely watch the Dorothy Stratten movie with Jamie Lee Curtis.
For the Roberts fanatics out there, and for you as well, Paul Snyder Jr., there is a Eric Roberts interview from the Howard Stern show from 1994 that is very revealing. It talks about him and Julia and other fun stuff, but also Roberts is wearing his signature V-neck.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And his wife comes and hangs out. Eliza comes and hangs out. And she's fun. She seems like a really cool girl. He loves his wife, man. Like,
yes, she's also his manager.
Yes, that's right. In the Corolla interview, he brings her up a lot, and yeah, she seems
in the one where I saw him on a line saying that his favorite role is Star 80. He brings her up too. He says that when the video clip starts, he says that he doesn't like doing these things because they don't pay anything, but his wife tells him to do it because it's for the fans.
I saw that. Yeah, I saw that thing.
He's like, and I love my wife, and she's my manager, and I do love you guys. So here you are.
Oh, yeah. One last thing I wanted to say is some point during the shooting of this film, or maybe afterwards, Roberts and Fosse might have been with him, but Roberts went and visited Dorothy Stratten's grave and broke down in tears and in the cemetery. So he was like really, really moved by it.
Not hard to believe with as committed, it's just any actor it's a big role where he's doing like a lot of scenes in this movie, and it's not that is not surprising to me that he would have an emotional response to any of the characters.
It's a real tour de force performance, man.
Yes, it's like he's definitely committed.
It's the greatest Roberts performance.
That's why I think this is his best performance so far. I would definitely say this is the best movie too.
Yeah, I haven't seen Hitman's Run, so.
Oh, dude, Hitman's Run is going to be amazing.
I'm going to save my judgment until after.
One last thing about Roberts, though, is that Laramia, the person who loves Star 80, he told me right now that Eric Roberts is really good on the show Righteous Gemstones.
Yes, I knew that he was in that show.
I had no idea.
The new season of it.
Because I'm the great
McBride and
Eric Roberts co-host. I don't know what he's on.
Well, thanks for listening, folks, and come back for Hitman's Run.
Exhaustive look at Star 80 to be followed by an even more exhaustive look at Hitman's Run.
I'm down. We're just going to have to start much earlier.
Look, I gotta get up early. So why don't you get the fuck out of here?